The theme of tonight is how to be successful in the 2021 USMRC. Tonight's for everyone, and I hope you carry the spirit of this helpfulness forward into the event, especially on the practice day. It's really great to share what you know. And just so we know why we're here, our dear friend David Storrs, who, as you know, won the U.S. Match Racing Championship in 2017 at the age of 73. At the age of 73, David won it. And he had fallen in love with match racing about 5 years before then, but he had always wanted to win the USMRC. In fact, when he won it, he kidded that he was going to put it on his headstone. He's a modest guy. He doesn't really have a big headstone, but if he did, I'm sure he'd have it there. But he ended up passing away less than 2 years later due to a heart complication. And in his will, he left some money to the U.S. Sailing, but earmarked for the U.S. Sailing Match Racing Committee to use to grow the sport of match racing in the U.S. and North America, and to raise the level of the U.S. and North American match racers. So that was Dave's gift to us. And Pearson Potts is now the chair of the U.S. Sailing Match Racing Committee. And he and a small committee are doing a lot of clever things with that money and plans for that money. But one of the things the money is earmarked for is to do a clinic before the 3 U.S. Sailing Match Racing Championships. As Jeffrey remembers, we did a 2-day clinic before the Rose Cup for the youth sailors. Steve Hunt did a great 1-day seminar before the, clinic, if you will, before the U.S. Women's Match Racing Championship, which I hear was well received. And this is the one for the U.S. Match Racing Championship. And why are we doing this? Because Dave was a student of the sport. And his theory was the better everyone is, the better the racing is. Winning's fun, but winning's a lot more fun when it's hard to do it. So we remember our friend Dave Storrs. Many of you know Dave, but once again, we're here because of the generosity and the passion for match racing that Dave had. So let's just take 30 seconds to reflect on David Storrs. And I happen to have it on high authority that he knows we're here, and he couldn't be more thrilled. So the next thing to know is you guys are going to a mecca of match racing in the world. The Long Beach Yacht Club, to me, is the epitome of a club and a community which loves match racing and puts on an amazing show. Of course, their star child is the Congressional Cup. But they run a lot more than Congressional Cup. They run the Ficker Cup. They have a junior event now named for Scotty Dixon. They run California Dreamin' Series, and they're running the USMRC. They actually have a fleet of Solings now. We're going to do more and more match racing in the Solings going forward. So for those of you who have not been to the Long Beach Yacht Club yet, you are in for a real treat. I always say there's always more volunteers at the events that Long Beach Yacht Club runs than there are competitors. And I'm not kidding. And it's really fantastic. You're looking at it right there. They pack a lot into a small footprint. The swimming pool takes up, a lot of their property, but you can see all the Catalinas lined up stern to the dock in the front of the club there. Then the clubhouse is in the corner, and then you can see behind them, that's Alamitas Bay, which you'll be sailing out through the bay and then off into the area off the beach there. So, but Long Beach Yacht Club is an amazing host for the USMRC. It's a pinnacle place to go race, and it's fantastic. And the Congressional Cup is the granddaddy of them all. It began in 1964. I can't say before all of us were born, because I was born 10 years before that, but before most of us were born. 1964, they began the Congressional Cup. This was the 56th running of the Congressional Cup. So when you go there, just admire the history, enjoy the trophy, enjoy all the lore of the Congressional Cup. It really is special. So, and Kurt, please pass along to everyone to the club how pleased we are they're running the USMRC. Couldn't be happier with that. And then, of course, the Catalina 37, you can't match race in boats that aren't the same. And in 1992, through a lot of generosity, the club and the foundation out there has the use of 12, I believe 12 of these Catalina 37s. They're almost 30 years old, but you won't notice that when you won't know that when you go sailing them. They're all the same. They're identical, and it's a fantastic. And you get to sail with 6 people and sometimes 7 people, and it's a great thing. So for those of you who haven't been there before, you're in for a treat. If you haven't sailed the Catalina 37 before, it's not like any other boat, including the Match 40. It's very different, and you are in the right place to learn about it.
Hey, Perry. Is it soon?
So I'm happy to be helping out here. I fell in love with the Prince of Wales. That's the Prince of Wales Bowl on the right there. It used to be called the Prince of Wales. Something happened with something or other, and now it's called the USMRC. But we always knew it as the Prince of Wales. And my dad raced in the Prince of Wales. He did a qualifier for that when I first learned about it. But I was fortunate enough to go to school with Peter Eisler, known as Pedro. And we had a good run at Yale. We were All-Americans. We were college national champions. Pedro won the College Sail of the Year in 1977. And after we graduated, he called me up and said, "Hey, Dave, I just qualified for the Prince of Wales finals. You want to sail with me?" I go, "Sure, that's that match racing thing." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Pedro, I don't know anything about match racing." He goes, "Hey, how hard could it be? It's just a race with 2 boats in it." So off we went. Off we went to the 1977 Prince of Wales. We sailed in 210s. It's a boat that's pointed at both ends in Hingham, Massachusetts. And we were dead last. We won 1 race and finished DFL, bottom of the totem pole. And I've been hooked forever. It's like, wow, this is really hard, this race with just 2 boats. So if any of you you're going to your first UMRC this year and you finish last, don't worry. It's just the beginning. And if you're really good and you think you might be winning it, be careful, because it's sometimes hard, even when you're one of the best. So that's how I began my Prince of Wales. I sailed several of them through the end of the 70s and early 80s. I was fortunate enough to win it in 1982. We were sailing J24s up in Vancouver, where if you've ever been up there, there's like 5 knots of current. You stand on the dock and there's a 2-foot standing wave behind the dock. There's so much current. And we beat Benny Mitchell in the finals. In fact, our quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals all went to the 5th race. So we got our money's worth there. And we won the 82 Prince of Wales. And next thing I know, I get an invitation to sail in the 1983 Congressional Cup, which was a big deal back then because it was pretty much a West Coast club back then. So I put together a team of friends of mine, Pedro, Dave Dellenbaugh, his brother Brad Dellenbaugh, a guy named Moose McClintock, a guy named Chuck Wilk, Peter Daly. These were all just friends. None of us had done much in the sport. But the key was we were all good sailors, though we didn't know much about match racing. I had never sailed a big boat. I had never sailed a boat with a wheel on it. And off we went to the Congressional Cup. And our whole goal was to not match race. Our whole goal was to stay away from the other boats because they knew how to match race. And back then you entered with 10 minutes to go. You had 10 minutes of pre-start. And we just did our best to avoid the other boat. We tacked, started there right, went right, marched to port, and we started winning races by 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And we ended up winning the Congressional Cup our first year. Went back the next year, won it again, back-to-back 83, 84. Went back in 85. Now we know how to match race. Haven't won it since. But the reason I tell you the story is it was all about the team. And I can promise you that match racing is more about the team than any other part of our sport. I had Dave Dellenbaugh. He's gone on to win the America's Cup. Peter Eisler. He's won several America's Cup. Brad Dellenbaugh, as Kirk knows, one of the leading umpires in sport. He's won the Prince of Wales as a skipper. Moose McClintock, 5 J24 North American championships with 4 or 5 different skippers. And we turned out to be just a really good team. And I can't emphasize the team aspect enough. And I'm sure Doug and Steve will, when I talk about boat handling and boat speed, are going to say it's very integrated. So I hope your crews are here. I hope you share this with your crews and keep that in mind. The last thing I want to say is, by way of introduction, is match racing makes you a better fleet racer. And the proof of that is almost every great racer that you can think of, when it comes to mind, they're match racers. In 1984, the Olympic trials in the sailing, we were second to Robbie Haynes in the sailing. And he went on to win the gold medal in 84 that summer. Well, his crew was a guy named Ed Trevelyan. You've never heard of Ed. And a guy named Rod Davis. You've heard of Rod. Rod Davis has now won 4 congressional cups. And he's won several Olympic medals. But he's a match racer. Ed Trevelyan won the Prince of Wales that we were dead last in 1977. He won the Prince of Wales. So Robbie had 2 great match racers crewing for him. Match racing makes you a better sailor. So all of you are going to be better sailors after you finish the USMRC. Speaking of teammates and having people help out, we have 2 amazing people to help you tonight. I think they're legends in the sport. They might disagree. They don't think they're old enough to be legends, but they are certainly on the top of my list anytime I go match racing. We've got Steve Flam. Steve is pictured on the left picture. He's on the boat on the right with a protest flag up. He's always a tactician. I mentioned this is the 56th running of the Congressional Cup. Steve has sailed in 35 of them. Think about that. Steve Flam has sailed in 35 Congressional Cups, going back to the old 40s and then the 38s and the 37s. He's won it a couple times. He's been second more times than he cares to remember. He got to be 3rd in the world, tactician and match racing. He's just a tactical guru, but he's also great on a boat and can talk about boat speed and whatnot. So Steve, thank you for joining us. And it's Doug McLean on the right. I've sailed with Doug several times in the Congressional Cup. Doug's done 13 Congressional Cups, including several with myself. Doug was with me when we won the Prince of Wales in 2017. I was fortunate enough to win 4 of them when I came back into the sport in 2006. I sailed with my friend Chris Muessler from 2006 to 2015, sailed in 10 of them in a row, won 4 for a total of 5. And Doug was with me on that last one, which was great. He does bow, he does mast, he trims, he does tactics, he could even drive. In fact, I can say the same for Steve. So we're very fortunate to have Steve and Doug here tonight. They both could talk about everything, but Doug's going to be mostly focusing on the boat handling, setting up the boat and the boat handling. And Steve's going to be mostly talking about the speed and then the strategy. But for both of you guys, let's give Steve and Doug a big hand for being here. All right. So that's the opening. As I said, this is for you all. In a very short time here, Doug's going to talk about how to set the boat up. How do you tape the jib sheets? How do you hook the spinnaker sheets on? Please ask questions. This is for you. This is a classroom situation. This isn't a lecture. Doug and Steve don't have canned presentations tonight. They're just going to share some thoughts. And then you can say, well, what about this? Maybe you have some experience in the boats and you want to ask them about some things. Or maybe you have no idea about them. Like I said, just raise your hand. I'll sort of moderate it, make sure everybody gets a chance to be heard. Or just come off mute and say, hey, Dave or Doug or Steve, I got a question. So obviously, I'm sure you have a notebook right there, and I'm sure you've got a pen to make some notes. You've got my Catalina 37 notes I sent around. All the skippers received that. If the crews haven't, then your skippers didn't send it to you. So skippers, get off your rocker and send your crews those notes. They're loaded with stuff, and a lot of stuff you've been hearing is down there, but you also want to keep some notes here. So. And the plan is we'll go for a while. We'll take a short bio break somewhere a little after 9, and then we'll shoot to go to 10:15 on the East Coast, 7:15 or so on the West Coast. If you got to go, you got to go. It's all being recorded, but I'm certainly not going to hang up until there's nobody here left to talk to, because I really want to make sure you're ready to go. So with that in mind, as you all know who've been in my clinics, my brain is calibrated. It starts with boat handling. How many of you ever lost a race because of a boat handling issue? All the hands go up. So it all begins and ends with boat handling, which includes being able to slow your boat down, stop your boat, sail your boat backwards, accelerate your boat. That's all boat handling. And we're going to spend some time on that. And then, of course, getting the colored sail up and down. And then boat speed. I always say you don't need to be faster than the other boat, but you can't be slower. And these boats do not go very fast. So a little edge in boat speed is a huge one. And Steve's going to talk about that and momentum and whatnot. And then we'll do boat handling and boat speed before the break. Then we come out of the break, we'll do tactics. And I've got some video, all my videos from the last Congressional Cup, the one that just happened a week ago or so. and we're going to focus a lot on the pre-start, because I think in the Catalina 37s and the Long Beach racetrack, there's very few passing lanes. I don't know the statistic of the boat that leads the first mark, but I bet I'm going to guess close to 80% of the time, if you lead the first mark, you win the race. So the start, it's huge. We'll spend some time on that. And then I got some upwind stuff. And I got some great pictures of Jeffrey in action and whatnot. So let's begin with boat handling. Doug, why don't you take us on board and talk to us? How do you set your boat up? What do you know? You're in the front of the boat. What are you doing? What are you taping? Setting the boat on the dock. What are you doing, Doug?
Yeah, first thing, as you mentioned, the biggest thing on these things, the lines and everything are just twice or 3 times bigger than anybody's probably used to.
Hey, Doug, before you get going, Doug, turn your camera on too so people can see your smiling face.
Oh, you're killing me.
Nah. There you go. All right.
Yeah, so everything's got quite a bit of friction on the boat, and everything hangs up. So the biggest thing is when you are hooking everything up, such as the spin halyard, make sure you tape the spin halyard, make sure you tape all the shackles because they're all big old shackles. And you clip both the spinnaker sheet and the afterguide to the spinnaker, and make sure you can't do enough tape. On the topping lift, make sure you tape the topping lift and make sure.
Let's pause one sec, because I remember a lot of spinnaker sheets coming off. So one of the biggest difference in these boats is there's a spinnaker sheet and there's a lazy sheet or afterguide, whatever. There's 2 lines attached to each corner. And the key, what he just said, is make sure you shackle each line into the spinnaker independently. A lot of times people will shackle one line into the spinnaker and shackle the other one into the shackle of the first line. And that's just putting all your eggs in one basket. That's what you're saying, right, Doug?
Correct. And make sure you put the afterguide on the bottom and then the spinnaker sheet goes on top.
We have lots of little things tonight. We had a soccer coach that used to say, it's a little thing, but it's everything. So that's a little trick. So the guy goes on the bottom, sheet on the top, what you just said?
Correct.
Do people ever end for end them and tie the line, to tie a bowline and have the shackle at the other end? Is that
you know, I think they outlawed that and said you couldn't do it. When I was tuning up with Taylor a couple of weeks ago, they said you weren't allowed to do that anymore.
I looked for the sailing instructions, but I hadn't seen them posted, so I haven't been able to see the do's and don'ts.
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think they do allow that. And I know they were doing it. And Jeffrey, you can probably talk to this at ConCup. I know they were allowing us to end for end the sheet so that we didn't have to use the shackles.
Yeah, when we were at Congressional Cup, there was no provision saying that you couldn't get rid of the shackles and use knots instead. So that's what we did. We actually used the shackles for the after guys because they had the pucks on the end of them. But then we bowlined the sheets to the after guys and to the kite. So that way we also had less weight on the clear of the sail.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can do that, I think that's a great idea. I was doing some training, 2-boat training with Taylor a couple of weeks ago with Steve, actually. And they had discussed that it wasn't allowed to do it, but now it must be okay to do that, which is actually much better to tie a bowline rather than tape the shackle on.
But even if you tie a bowline, make sure you tape the tail.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would add, all of us here, let's just ask and get a clarification at the first skippers meeting on that, just to make sure that everybody's good, because we hate to see someone get thrown out either way for that.
I should point out, I meant to mention, Steve is sailing with Janelle in this event. So I'm so impressed that here's Steve racing the event, but he has no problem in sharing. Janelle's probably kicking him under the table. Hey, stop telling everything, but hey, that's Steve. Okay, so Doug, that was the sheets. Now you're going topping lift. Go ahead.
Yeah, the topping lift also tape that shackle. Every shackle that hooks any sail up should be taped up really well. Also, if you have some clear tape, all the blocks, all the jammers, everything on the mast, anything you can tape, it jams up or catches. The jib sheets are big, heavy jib sheets, and they catch on everything on the mast. So anything you can tape up to make it smoother around the mast, all the way up to about 5-6 feet up on the mast, tape everything.
I remember it was pretty standard to bring the 2-inch wide clear packing tape, but then sometimes it seemed like they just put several rolls on the boat. So are they supplying that, or should everybody bring a couple of rolls of 2-inch wide clear packing tape?
Steve would know more about that, but I don't think they're supplying the tapes like they used to.
I think I know Congressional Cup they do. I'm not sure at this event. I can ask Ben Wheatley about that.
But so that'd be a good, that's something you would never bring to something else. So that's great. Doug, going back to topping lift, is there a bridle? And do you used to wrap the bridle around the pole? Or I can't remember now.
No, there's no bridle. It goes all the way out to the end of the pole. And the topping lift just gets hooked on and you just leave it on all the time. Same with the spinnaker halyard. And then I run the spinnaker halyard forward on the bow pulpit and tape it to the bow pulpit.
Nice. All right. And then are you taping the sheet and the lazy sheet together for about 6 inches at the end there?
Yeah, so after the sheet and the guy are in the pole, so about 4 to 6 inches behind that, I tape those two together. So when you pull the guy back for the first set, both sheet and guy come back and doesn't jam on the end of the pole.
That's a nice little trick. Anyone have any questions about what he just said there?
Yeah,
do you,
Doug.
do you do that right on the dock before you go sailing?
Yeah, I try to do it before every race.
Yeah. Okay, Doug, what else is in your bag of tricks? You're still on the dock. What else are you doing to your boat?
The jib sheet, rather than tying a bowline on the jib sheet, the bowline usually ends up going into the block of the clew or into the jib block. So what we actually do is tie one little knot and run a really long tail, about a 6 to 8 inch long tail, and run some zip ties, zip tie it to itself, and then tape it, just thoroughly tape it, and just try to get it as smooth as possible so it can't catch on anything.
Jeffrey, your hands up. What do you got, Jeff?
They now forbid zip ties, but the Catalina special on the jib sheet still works. You just have to use extra tape.
Okay.
So Jeffrey, what's the Catalina special?
It's what he's talking about by tying a little knot. So I don't know how you do it, but I was taught to do a half hitch with the long tail, and then you kind of tape like a kind of a cone shape around the half hitch knot, and then tapering it down towards the end so that it drags cleanly along the shrouds and whatnot, because they're giant overlapping jibs.
Yeah, correct.
And are people still using packing tape for that, Jeffrey?
Yeah, we put packing tape on ours because the E-tape chafes really easily on the shroud. So the packing tape will make your tape job last all day.
You know, taping the jib sheet, this is a big deal. And I remember the last couple of times I did, it was really cool. On the very first day when people went sailing, every team did a really good job with it. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you're going to go up a boat. So what we all agreed is let's all not take our tape off at the end of the day. Let the next team come over and see if they like it. And if they like the job, then it's a lot of tape saved, a lot of time saved. If they don't like the job, they can either ask you to take your tape off, they can put the tape on. But that's a really nice thing where you all can work together because it's a lot of work and tape and time to tape these jib sheets. And if everybody does it right the first time, you can just leave it on the whole regatta. So I just throw that out there. All right, Doug, after jib sheets, what else?
Yeah, also on the jib sheets, a lot of people didn't know about, there's a bungee inside of the sheet bags. The bungee goes outboard and works as a stopper. So you can actually see the bungee right there in the video. You can't
Right
see
here?
my mouse, but
Is
yeah,
that
right
it
there.
here?
There's the bungee. So the bungee holds the tail down to prevent the overrides and prevent it from jamming up.
So the
So
jib sheet,
lighter, you can
the
put
jib
it
sheet
over
comes
one,
in.
and in heavier, you can put it over both sheets.
So the jib sheet comes into the block, then it goes under the bungee. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And
Then it goes around the winch.
No, it goes to the turning block right there, and then it goes
turning
forward
block.
to the winch.
Turning block to the winch.
Nope,
And
the
it-
turning block and then to the winch forward. The forward winch?
Oh, to the forward winch.
Yeah, right
Got you. So what you just said is so when do you run it back under the shock cord a second
there.
time?
If it's
Lighter?
super windy, we run the shock cord over both lines or both times. If it's not that windy, we'll run it over one of them.
Copy that. And that's just an asshole preventer. Right?
Yeah, and they're already in the sheet bags tied on that you can't take them off, but people didn't even know what they were for, and that's what they're used for.
Great. Okay. All right. Coming back in the boat, what else do you do? And maybe we're getting into Steve's land here. What else do you do on the dock to prepare to go?
I like to put on the jib halyard, if it's not already on it, is add a sail tie. So it's easy to release the jib halyard jammer at the weather mark. So I just tie a little tail of a sail tie up onto the jammer. So it's just really quick and easy to release it.
You mean up in here on the deck here, there's all these jammers
Correct.
where the mast person is going to be having, and you just tie a jib, you say a sail tie to the
Well,
lever.
Just a small piece, about maybe a 4 or 5 inch sail tie, folded over just so it's easier to grab.
Copy that.
That's
Nice.
just personal preference.
No, this is, listen, share what you got and people can choose what they want to do. What else you got for getting the boat up on the dock?
I think that's pretty much it for rigging, sails and stuff like that.
Steve, anything in the back of the boat you do before you cast the lines off?
Yeah. Well, and one thing, Doug, these jibs with the hanks, remember you got to tape the hanks on the jib too, really thoroughly. But just working back. Yeah, obviously. So we usually will get a laminated pairing sheet that we tape to the back of the boat, and I circle our matches, and and try to make sure. That's my whole goal on a regatta, is to not screw up and go in at the wrong time or be at the wrong end. If I can do that, I'm pretty happy, and the rest of it's gravy. I do put the clear tape on the gear shift handles so the main sheet doesn't catch on it. Also centering the prop, which we'll get out there, but I tape that right there on that binnacle.
So Steve, tell the people what's on this binnacle, the two handles.
Okay, on the binnacle, there are two controls, one on each side. On the starboard side is the throttle, and the port side is the gear shift. And you have to have the gear shift in reverse at all times when you're racing. Also, it's a feathering prop, so when you want to center the prop before racing, you actually, instead of letting it spin in neutral, which is not very fun on your hands, so to grab it, you leave it in reverse, and it will turn one direction. And there's a keyway and 2 bolts, and you put the bolts at 45 degrees from the top, and there should be a keyway that goes to the top. They're not marked well at all, a lot of them. And if anybody needs any instruction on those at the regatta, I'm happy to help. So, and also ask Ben Wheatley. I would recommend having one person designated to do that, and a couple of people back them up that they did it. Sometimes we'll run it between races if we think we're slow. We might have had kelp or something. Just do a quick reverse, and you want the boat moving forward at a fairly good clip when you go to center it.
That's a huge piece of information. If you don't know, I've never gone down there. I would have no idea to do it. My attitude is, in my boat, the youngest guy goes in the water, youngest person goes up the mast, and the youngest person goes down below and centers the prop. So and then you have to tape the handle in reverse, so the umpires, everybody knows it's in reverse. So that's a big one.
One other thing I would say before I leave the dock is, on the main sheet, it's got a fine tuner in the front of the main sheet purchase.
That's that black line right here.
Right. Two things you do. One, the fine tuner is much longer than it needs to be. So I tie a knot in it just before it bottoms out when you've got it pulled down, so you still have that purchase working for you to get the last bit of grunt on the course tune of the main sheet, because otherwise you lose one purchase if you just have it out. And in the pre-start, if it's windy, sometimes in the circling, I'll have it pulled all the way down, because that block is really dangerous. A lot of people have been wounded by that, including me over the years. And then you just let it up on the last approach coming up to the line on starboard. And it goes out to the knot. And you also want to make sure it's eased on the run. Same thing to that knot. And then we put a mark on the main sheet gross tune where we know we've just got it to where it should be, where we won't bottom out the fine tune going upwind. Because there's nothing more frustrating for a skipper than when he wants more main sheet. You've maxed out the fine tuner. Now you gotta go down and fool around and let the fine tuner off and pull the course tune in and pull it back in. That doesn't go well. Doesn't go over well.
We got some good video of the fine tune in action. It's a very subtle thing. Again, different from any other kind of boat for match racing. So every one of you on your team, you're gonna have a designated main trimmer, and that person's gonna be doing traveler and main sheet. The driver doesn't touch a line on these boats. Which is kind of nice for us old drivers. But all right. Well, listen, and then of course the tennis balls will be there, but they've taken the stanchions off. But there's stanchion bases along here, so there's tennis balls which go on there, because if you sit on a stanchion base on a tennis ball, you're having some form of an enema. So make sure you got your tennis balls on there. Flags on the backstay. The backstay you don't touch. It's not adjustable, so you don't have to worry about that. And you just put your flags back there.
One last thing, Dave, on the halyard. It's a personal preference too, but I use the starboard halyard for the spinnaker. So I end up jumping from the low side, but it's a lot less friction than jumping the weather spinnaker halyard over the hounds. It's too much friction. And
so that's clever. So there's two spinnaker halyards, what you just said.
You've got a port and a starboard one. I use the starboard one. I know they made a ruling at Congressional Cup. A team wanted to use the port spinnaker halyard as a topping lift. That was not allowed to do. So I just put the port spinnaker halyard and hook it to the base of the mast. And so it's totally out of the way, and just snug it up as tight as you can. And then you use the topping lift, obviously, for the topping lift.
Good. Lots of good intel. If you didn't know this stuff, you'd have no way of knowing this stuff. So that's what we're doing tonight. All right. Any questions from the peanut gallery? Any questions for Steve and Doug on setting your boat up before you actually go sailing?
For the topping lift call with the spinnaker halyard, is that rule continuing over with this event or not? Because it's usually a lot nicer to use the unused spinnaker halyard as your topping lift in these boats.
I don't know. I just know they made a ruling at Congressional Cup, and as Steve said earlier, you might want to just check with or write in, question the umpires for this regatta.
Yeah, the simple way to do it when you get there on Thursday, just write out a question and give it to Kirk, and he will. I'm happy to give you an answer. Yeah, Jeffrey, go ahead.
They made that ruling actually at Ficker Cup and intend to keep it through. We try to do it at Ficker Cup as well, and Congressional Cup, and it's not just a Congressional Cup thing. They just forbid the use of that other halyard for anything but spinnaker.
Okay. Well, let's go sailing. So again, Doug's going to lead us through this, but we're going to do the boat handling. We'll start with tacks. I've got a video of Taylor Campfield's team doing a couple nice tacks. So Doug, you can sort of watch it and critique it. What do you like? What are you seeing? Then I've got a bear-away set on Taylor's team. I've got a tack set by Johnny Bernson's team. I've got a nice jibe, VMG jibe from Taylor's team and some jibe hots. And then we'll do the drops. And of course, on the drops, you can be coming in on starboard or coming in on port. And that's when Doug, you and Steve will get into the subtleties of the, obviously the pole and the jib order. And then we'll do a little boat handling and dialing up. So here's Taylor's team going through attack. We'll just watch it once. I turn the audio off, but there isn't much talking during his tack. Whatever position you are, watch your position. If you're the driver, watch Taylor. Watch how smooth he is on the wheel. And after attack, there's no correction. That's always a sign of a good driver. Victor De Leon, his main trimmer, he's doing traveler and main sheet, which is both fine tune and gross tune. So Victor's in the white shirt there. Mike Buckley is the tactician with the red shoes. He's just rolling the boat. You've got the jib trimmer is releasing, I imagine, in the tack, and the offside trimmer is trimming, and then the bow person's going. So Doug, take us through a tack. What should they be thinking about? What are some of the coaching points of a good tack?
Yeah, the biggest thing is obviously remember to take the winch handle out before. So if you're the primary trimmer, you try to remove the winch handle before you come up to the high side. And then the trimmer, which is George Pete, he runs down and he'll do the release. And then the offside trimmer will tail the jib sheet across the boat and go hike out while he's tailing all the way across. And then the trimmer will come bring the handle or put the handle in and do the final grind and then take the jib sheet from the offside trimmer, as they did it perfectly in the video.
All right, so this is George Pete down to leeward, you're thinking, right?
Yep.
All right, hang on a sec. All right. So first of all, Taylor starts to turn the boat, not much action. So here you can see the action of the fine tune. So this is the fine tune here, the dark rope that I'm showing you. It's a 3-to-1, I believe. It has a ball in the end, and then it goes up to the boom. So obviously you want to set your fine tune up so that when your boom is sort of max eased, as much as you'd ease it, the fine tune is all the way off. And you would have your main sheet. That's where you'd put your mark. That's what Steve was saying. You'd let your boom, you'd let your fine tune off, ease your main as much as you'd ever ease it upwind, put a mark where it comes out. That's max ease. And then theoretically, if you pulled your fine tune on too much, it would be over trimmed. Is that about right, Steve? Did I say that right?
Well, no, it's actually kind of the opposite, David. It's that you don't, in the breeze, in light air, it's not a big deal. You really aren't doing much with the main. You can horse it in, but in the breeze, when it's windy, you put a lot of leech on these mains. And if you bottom out on that fine tuner, it's really not a pleasant operation to have to let the fine tuner off, pull the gross tune in, then pull it back in again. So
then what you're saying is in a breeze, let the fine tune all the way off, trim your main in to where it's pretty much right. Put a mark there, and that gives you more fine tune if you need it.
Well, yeah, but you want to make sure that the fine tuner is still taut so that you get that last purchase for horsing in that last couple of inches on the gross tune. Like if you let it just bottom out on the top block, you lose one purchase.
Right. So if there's no tension in the fine tune system, you lose a purchase. That's
well, there is no, there's a little bit. There's like the ball, that blue ball just above the block should be like, say, 2 inches below that red dot you got on the video when it's all the way out, and you're on your mark on the gross tune.
Now, one thing I think on the Traveler, I think the Traveler comes across the windward side, and then the stanchion base has a little, I don't know what you call it. It's got a little
little piece of stainless loop.
Little piece of sand, and you actually go through that, and that actually becomes a turning block for the pulling the Traveler up. Is that correct?
Yes, and they've actually just recently apparently increased their budget at Long Beach Yacht Club for Congressional Cup and got Traveler lines that are really long now. They always were too short, and it was a nightmare because there was a lot of friction, and now they're super long, so they go much easier for, because when you're roll tacking the boat, they want you to pull the Traveler across to the high side but stay on the low side as you're doing it.
So what you're going to see in this tack is you'll see Victor releases the fine tune because you want little manies coming out. And he pulls the Traveler over from the old high side. He pulls the Traveler up to the new high side and then crosses. All right, so let's watch that. Hey, behave. So there he's released, he's eased the fine tune. You can see that. The boats, everybody rolls the boat, flattens, and right back in. It's your choice who calls the press. I like that everybody's really low on the boat. So Taylor's got really clear vision of the water and there's less windage. And then you can see there, you're building speed. Steve Flam, how long are you building speed for in this much wind?
That was the finals. That was pretty light, probably about 6 knots. Usually if it's flat water, you know, it takes 20 to 30 seconds to get final. So we're usually going, say, 90% on the jib out of the tack for the landing. And then, and again, you know, honestly, tacks are like snowflakes. They're a little different. We kind of just use, it's that trim loop between the trimmer and the skipper on how they feel. Some tacks you feel like, especially if you tack onto a lift or a little puff, it feels great. And if you tack onto a header or a lull, it takes longer. So I think, like I say, 20 seconds or so, approximately 15, 20 seconds to get up to speed.
But one huge key is to get that boom centered as soon as possible. So the Traveler switch, like in any boat, sonar J22 is really important. And then easing your sail because you're going to come out a little fat to build speed. Doug, how about the trimmer? You know, Steve mentioned 90%. You can see the trimmer down there. What are you looking at when you're trimming? Are you looking at the distance from the clew to the tuning block? Are you looking at the overall jib? What are you looking at?
Overall jib, and obviously when in the breeze on, the jib gets almost plastered on the shrouds when it's pretty windy. And then it's just communicating on how far trimmed you are to the driver. But I'd say you start out pretty eased, and then you obviously, as it gets windier, you bring it in more and more, quicker and quicker.
All right. Okay, we'll watch one more tack and let's see if there's any questions from the troops on tacking. I always try to turn the boat slowly at first to get sort of a max glide. And then once the sails start shaking, I turn them maybe a little more, one more spoke to get through the wind, and then try not to over correct myself on the other side. That's always the test. All right, any questions from anybody? Liz, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, just wondering if that process changes at all, say in the pre-start when your tacks are going to be more aggressive, the timing changes, any changes for a pre-start versus a beat?
Well, we usually, in the pre-start, we'll leave the offside trimmer on the starboard side and then the primary trimmer on the port side, and each person will just take a side. But that's personal preference, I think, on your team.
Okay, and then in the main trimmer's role, are you centering imagining you're centering the traveler for much of it, and how about the main sheet controller? Are you sort of living exclusively on the coarse tune rather than playing with the fine tune?
I would say the one thing we do is on your approach into the starting line, you have to be, and we usually talk about this, a possibility of a high cross. So you want to have your traveler up as you come in case there's a high cross. Either you're doing it or your opponent's doing it. And then once you get settled into the dial in, then you center the traveler again. And then usually we just leave it centered until that last approach, usually on starboard, hopefully, if you've done a good job. But I know I like to have this main so important on this boat. I definitely, if you've got that high cross option, you want to have that traveler up as you're first coming in and entering the line.
Good questions. I think I'm noticing no backing of the jib. Is that correct?
I think they usually do a slight backing in the light air. In the breeze, they let it go. It blew through pretty nicely there. And in the breeze, like Doug was saying, in the breeze, when it's windy, you just grind that jib in as hard as you can and get on the rail. Once it's blowing 12 plus, you just 13, you're just grinding that thing in and all the way and getting it out, getting on the rail.
And one other thing, as the bow person who's usually going to climb underneath the jib, it really helpful for the bow person to grab the lazy sheet or the old sheet and pull it forward to help it release it, because it just ties up all the way on the shrouds, the mast, all the way around. So the bow person can either pull the foot of the clew forward or release the lazy sheet.
All right, well, let's put a spinnaker up. So we're going to watch a bear-away set. If you're just joining us, please stay on mute. Somebody's not on mute, so please do that. Helps with the recording later on. So one thing that's interesting about these boats is you've got an adjustable inboard end. So that's one thing Doug's going to talk about. And you can see this is their bow person. This is Eric Champagne he's the bow person. He's actually going to be raising the inboard end of the pole on the port side. And then here's the mast person. The pole's already up, I imagine. The top is up, and this is probably the mast person getting ready to raise the halyard, as Doug said, on the starboard side.
Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. I might just note Taylor is sailing with 7 people on this team. Some will be sailing with 6 and some are sailing with 7.
Right. Very good. I was just gonna make that point. So that's right. So so that's one thing that's interesting. And Doug, maybe you can talk a little bit about the inboard end height, and there's a VMG height, there's a jibing height, and blah blah. I noticed Taylor lets his own main sheet out, so even with 7 people, he likes to be in control of that. So skippers, you can consider whether you want to do that. Obviously, your spinnaker sheet's going to be cleated as always. You have to find the right place. Probably put a mark on it, so when it goes up, the trimmer can be either releasing the jib higher if needed, or helping pull the guy back if needed, like that. But let's just watch one of their sets. You're going to see somebody on their high side is manually pulling the guy back above the block, and then probably somebody in the cockpit is pulling it back. So we'll just watch a bear-away set, and then Doug, you can take it from there. All right, Doug, take it from the top. What are some of the coaching points for a good spinnaker set and bear away?
I think the first thing the trick that I learned early on was put the topping lift up first. So, because if you put the butt end up first, inevitably the pole, as you're pulling the topping lift, it'll get it stuck inside the jib. So I like to put the topping lift up to the mark, and that's I'm a big fan of marking everything. So have a mark for the topping lift at its normal set. And then you put the butt end up. That gets done second. If you can have, like Taylor had 7 people, but if you only have 6, usually the bow guy does the butt end of the pole after the topping lifts all the way up. He then opens the forward hatch, jumps down to leeward, and then jumps the halyard. Halyard kite goes up, and then the jib gets dropped as the kite's going up. And then the bow person just cleans up the jib after the kite is up and jib is down.
Okay. Luke, go ahead. What do you got?
Hey, Dave. Yeah, so I was wondering, like, sometimes at the Ficker, we had some issues where, like, the kite would fill before the halyard was all the way up, and it obviously made it a lot tougher to get it up. So wondering if you have thoughts on whether, like, the guy back should be waiting until it's fully up, or if it's worth it just to get the kite filled, even if it's down like 6 feet or something. I mean, obviously you want it to go up fast, but it doesn't always happen.
Good question, Doug.
When we've run into that problem, it's usually hoisting maybe a little too early. You got to wait till the boat, really is turned downwind and try to hide it behind the jib and the main as best you can. And just jump it as quickly as you can. I'm a big fan of getting that. The quicker you can get the guy and the pole back, the easier for the jib to drop and the easier for the kite to fill. So I think it would probably be better to have the kite filled rather than, earlier than later, but ideally it's when you hoist the kite is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. I think it's a trade-off, as Doug said. I think in the lighter breeze, you just need to pull the pole off the headstay about a foot just so you can get some wind in it so it'll fill. But if it's windy, my experience, these are huge spinnakers. It's better, I think, for whoever's pulling the guy back just to be a little clever. And it's really helpful if the person raising the spinnaker can kind of count it down like 3, 2, 1, give a sense of where the head is, because in the boat, you can't see where that is. And I think if it's breezy and you can get that spinnaker pretty much ring the bell and then snap the pole back, now you've got max spinnaker. If you do it too early, if you're 10 feet short, it's just a panic. And God forbid if you ever need to roll into a jibe. So I think it's a bit of a breeze on, as Steve said, no 2 sets are quite the same. Whoever's hoisting can help by counting it down to ring the bell. And the breezier it is, more you you don't do the big super square unless you're right there. So. All right. Any other questions about the spinnaker set? Steve, you're the tactician. What are you usually doing in the set? Are you letting the main out or what are you doing?
No, actually, most of my skippers like to let the main out. Taylor, when I sailed with him, wanted to let the main out. Scotty likes to let the main out. Whoever I'm saying, skipper du jour likes to let the main out. So I go to the after guy, but I go to the sheet of the after guy. And because it's both ends are in the pole, both the sheet and the guy are in the pole, and I pull the pole back on the set. But Mike Buckley goes manually and pulls it forward. But I actually find if I'm on the winch, that way, especially if it's windy, I don't lose it. I'm actually got control. I'm not losing the energy in the chute. I can't, if I'm pulling it up there and it gets free, it's not, it clears it, but then I lose it. So, because I'm trying to bring it back off the headstay as it's going up and then let it forward just to fill it, just keeping it off, just off the headstay so the hanks can come down.
Yeah. There's a real subtle thing here. I remember too, when I was doing tactician is, you can see on my red pointer on the port side, the guy is led through a block that's pretty far forward on the deck. That's where the guy is. And then this other line out here to the left of it, that's the spinnaker sheet. And you can see the trimmer. Whoever's trimming for Taylor right here, he's trimming with his right hand, but his left hand, he's taking the slack out of that sheet. It's the lazy sheet. In other words, you've got to take the slack out of that because when you jibe, that's got to be ready to go. So that's something that either the tactician can do or the main trip, somebody on the set, just as part of your program, as soon as the spinner's up, take all the slack out of that lazy sheet. The The other thing that's happening is I saw whoever went forward here grabbed the lazy guy. Because on the starboard side, you've got your spinnakers flying on the sheet, but you've got the guy just hanging there. And whoever that was, I'll show you it again. He grabbed it and ran forward with it because that's the line that the bow person is going to need when you jibe. And there's nothing, I imagine, Doug, nothing more frustrating than trying to jibe and the after guy is way back there. You know, it's nice if somebody caddies it and brings it to you. So that's another little subtle thing, which I'll just play that.
About exactly what you're saying. It goes good to put marks on everything. So you can put a tape mark, or there might even be marks on the sheets and the guys.
Last thing on the sets is when your pole is up, it should be perpendicular to the mast, maximum projection. But if your pole is perpendicular, very often you can't do the dip pole jibe. You've got to get the inboard end up, and maybe it's a foot or something. And I don't know, are there marks on the mast, Doug, or the marks are on the line system? Where do you put the marks for your jibing mark?
There's marks, there's black marks that they've put on the mast, and it's usually the highest one is the one for the jibe.
And so like a black mark up, I can see it right there.
Correct. And so if it's actually a bit higher than that. But if we're coming to the mark and Steve is called, like he wants to jibe ASAP, I'll put it all the way up. So it won't even be a worry then. We won't have to move it after we've set.
Yeah. That's the $64,000 trick right there. If you know you're going to be an early jibe, make sure you tell your bow person so you can get that pole high. Okay, let's watch this set and then we'll do some jibes. So you can see Eric set the inboard end. You can see the hoister. Pole comes off. Remember the pole came off and then went forward again. Nice angle. You can see the person in the white hat. You see, just grab the lazy guy, the person in the white hat. That's probably their mast person. He just ran it forward and just put the slack on the deck. Eric's up on the bow, tidying up the jib. He's the bow person. And then he's ready to jibe. So, okay. All right, the next is going to be the tack set. We'll just watch one here, and then Doug can tell us what's different, if anything, with the tack set. Of course, in these boats, you can't put the pole up. There's no dangling the pole. So all the stuff that we do on smaller boats, that's not an option with these Tigers. So Doug, what's a little different on a tack set?
The only difference is I try to come in and raise the butt end of the pole as high as physically possible. And then as you're tacking, you help the jib get over the pole. And then you actually, so the pole's already up. He doesn't quite have it up yet, but you try to get the pole on the mast up. At this point, it's probably almost half to 3/4 of the way up at the mast.
Yeah.
And then as you're tacking, you help the jib go around the pole.
You can see it, right? Whoops.
Yeah, it actually does have it up.
Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
And then you have to, so you manually have to sort of lift the jib over the pole.
Got to help the jib over the pole. And then what you do is once the jib's over the pole, then you guide the pole, you lift the pole up for the pit person, and they just pull the topping lift all the way up to the mark.
So that's an exception to your policy of normally you don't put the inboard end up first, but in this case
Correct.
you have to. So you're probably cognizant of that. So when you grab the pole, you're probably pulling it away from the center line and as well as lifting it.
Correct.
You probably do that without even thinking about it. Yeah. And otherwise, everything's sort of the same.
Yeah, pretty much. And then it's once the pole's up, you just run to the leeward side.
Oops.
He just jumped down to the leeward side and then just starts hoisting the kite.
Yeah. And like any set, you don't let the jib out. That's standard. Okay. All right. Any questions about the tack set?
Yeah, that's a key point, Dave. Is a big problem. People let the jib go way out, and then when the jib comes down, what happens? It falls into the kite, and then it's just a complete nightmare. So you're better to over trim the jib or ease it to a mark and just cleat it and don't let it out anymore.
All right, VMG jibe. So this is where, for those of you who haven't sailed the Catalinas, this is all new stuff. It's a dip pole jibe. Obviously, at some point, the make sure the back of the boat tells the front of the boat you're jibing. There's a little bit of setup that has to happen. We do a thing in our boat called pass it on. So if I say something and the main trimmer hears it, he or she passes it on, jib trimmer, pass it on. Conversely, if the bow person says something, you pass it back, because these are big, long boats and they're pretty heavy and they get kind of loud. But again, you're going to see Eric Champagne here. He's the bow person. He'll go forward. He'll take the lazy guy in his right hand. There's a sail tie hanging down off the trip line for the pole. He'll have that in his left hand. And Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the bow person just does their own trip, unless the tactician does an override and says, I'll call the trip. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And then when you trip, it's just a matter of, practice and trial and error. And there's a right time, there's a sweet spot for that to happen. I suppose you have somebody on the sheet easing, somebody on the guy squaring. So it's probably a two-person system in the cockpit. Remember Steve's trick about the fine tune. If you pull the fine tune down, the block on that, the cleat and stuff won't be in midair and hit you. You just have to remember to let it out before you get to the leeward mark. So you round the leeward mark with your fine tune all the way off. Let's watch a jibe, and then Steve and Doug, and you say some things, then answer questions. Also notice how smooth everyone is on Taylor's boat. Just smooth is a word you use. And they all use their weight to roll. There's Eric calmly going forward, right hand trip. Left hand throws the lazy guy in. Whoever's on the lazy guy takes it. And then Eric will come and gather the new lazy guy, if you will, and be ready for the next jibe. So Doug, what are some of the coaching points on bow and mast for jibes?
Obviously, make sure the butt end is up to the mark so you can jibe. And then obviously making sure you put the lazy after guy in the pole the correct way and not upside down or get a hooper. So you're going to have to really pay attention, because it's difficult to have one hand's on the trip line, the other hand's on the after guy. And as you pull it across, you've got to then lay and trip it inside the pole.
And this is where you'd have these taped together. Is that the tape right there about 6 inches back? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it would be on the first set, would be taped right there. And then after the set, the tape comes off.
Oh, so it's just for the first set.
Just for the first set. It comes off after you've jibed a couple times.
Copy that. All right. And then Doug, you're the bow person. You trip. Is there any magic on when you trip, or is it just you trip at the right time?
It's some skippers like to call their own trips. When it's on my own, I wait till the person has brought the pole back a little bit and it's almost, at max back and the kite's extended. That's usually about the time to trip. And then it's just working closely and having marks on the topping lift so the person in the pit can drop it to that correct mark every single time.
Right. So your pit person's got to have that's what yeah. So you have to lower the pole the right amount and put a mark there.
Correct.
And then after the jibe,
you go in the water, you go too high, it'll hit the headstay.
Yeah, right. And then after the jibe, does the pit person hop up and take the inboard end down, or do you come back and do the inboard end down after?
I usually come back and do the inboard end, and I yell, obviously once the after guy's made, I yell made and try to push the pole away from the headstay, and then I'll come back and lower the inboard end or help the topping lift to help the topping lift go up also.
Great. Steve, anything from the back of the boat on a normal VMG jibe?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, on the Catalina 37s, unfortunately, they made the travel lines extremely long, but the main sheet is extremely short. And so going downwind, you have to have the fine tuner all the way out and the traveler all the way down to get the main to go all the way out. And there's breeze. So we're actually having to let everything out to get, if it's light here, it's not a problem, but if it's breezy and the pole's all the way back. One thing that was interesting in the 8 billion years I've sailed these boats and sailed in general, I've been jibing. I can't tell you how many times I've thrown a main across over the years on these boats and other boats. When I sailed with Taylor a few weeks ago, in the light air, I usually come out and I give this main a quick pump to make sure the top batten is a full batten in the mains we're probably using. In the mains Jeffrey used, they're not a full batten, so you have to worry about popping them. I'm not sure which sails we're using. I doubt we're using the Con Cup sails, but maybe we are. If it does have a full top batten, we have to pop that top batten on the jibe. And then I but I had it out a little more than Taylor liked it out of the jibe. It's not luffing and it felt good. And he actually told me he wanted to keep it in, probably a foot or two, probably a couple of feet in more every jibe to open up the slot between the spinnaker and the jib, spinnaker and the main until you've gotten the pole rotated back a little more. And that was.
You can see Victor does that. First of all, I love the way everyone's up on the high side for the jibe. Sail like an FJ. People, don't think you're on a heavy keel boat. Like all Taylor's team, other than Eric on the bow, is on the right side of the center line, and Victor's up there. All 120 pounds of him. He's rolling the boat, and then you're going to see him pull the main over. But then watch what he does right here. He stops it right there. I know in the match 40, I often reach up and stop it right there too in light air. That's what you're talking about. Is don't let it go out and shut down the slot. Right, Steve? That's your point right there.
Previously, every time I stopped the boom, it was with my head, but it wasn't intentional. But yes, he's holding it in temporarily and then letting it out as the spinnaker rotates a little bit as you get up to speed.
The other thing about stopping it suddenly is it's more likely the batten will pop if you're sailing with a main with a compression batten.
Right. These particular mains do not have a full top batten, so that you don't have to pop it. And I just not sure which sails are going to have us using.
And again, I'll point out to you guys who are new in these boats, they're really heavy boats. Steve's going to talk about the importance of keeping a rumbling. When I jibe, I start a slow turn, and as the boat starts to go below VMG, I maybe increase the turn by a spoke or so, and I always come out hot. Not hot in the sense of you can't make the pull, but I always come out higher than VMG to build speed out of the jibe, and then once I have good pressure, then I go down. So drivers, better to turn too far in a jibe than to not turn enough. Okay, any questions from the troops about jibing? Of course, heavy air is actually easier. You don't have to turn the boat very much. So. All right, well, let's do the takedowns. So now you can come in on starboard or you can come in on port. So let's just watch for a sec here. The boat's coming downwind. Here we go. So let's start with a port tack approach. Doug, this is the point where you're going to make the point about which goes up first and down first, the pole or the jib, depending on what tack you're on. So now you're on, let's talk about a port tack approach.
So port tack approach is actually your easiest one for the bow team. Is the pole can stay up, the jib can go up, and it makes life a lot easier. And then once obviously the jib's up, getting the pole down as soon as possible is your best option.
Okay.
And having usually the tactician comes forward for the human after guy.
So now, of course, Taylor jibed, but he was coming in on port there. Jib hired, make sure that whoever's doing mass has a good mark for that jib hired. It's really important to have it just right when you go around the corner. It's always a question of when to put the jib up. I would argue that Johnny Burtson's got his jib up too early. I don't see any reason to put the jib up until you're ready to take your spinnaker down. So anyway, so but you can see the pole is down, and you can see just, somebody needs to be on mute, please. You'll see the bow person is the same in the match 40. If you've sailed match 40 on the bow, the bow person has to reach under the jib. You see them up here, they reach under the jib and grab the chute and then go down the hole. So that's standard like on the match 40s. All right, so watch Johnny's port hand turn. If it's windier, I have no problem getting the jib up sooner, but when it's light air, that jib is no friend to the spinnaker. And you're not going very fast. Nice rounding, nice smooth turn. Okay, so now starboard, Steve, Doug, here's where you get to make the big point of the night on the spinnaker pole and the jib. Starboard approach.
Yeah, starboard approach, jib won't go up. You have to get the pole away first. And the trick is to try to push the jib as far to the right side of the boat as you can so you have room to put the pole away. Because what happens is it ends up getting stuck inside the jib there while the jib's laying on the deck. So the biggest thing is, and it's actually a great maneuver, not only on starboard, but other times, is getting the pole away sooner allows you to do whatever you need to do. But ideally coming out on starboard, you must get the pole away first, then jib goes up.
And is somebody from the back of the boat coming forward to help you guys up there, or does the bow and mast sort of have it all under control?
Well, if you're sailing with 6, usually the tactician will come forward and be the human guy.
Yeah, you can
And
see in
then
this
the
picture.
human guy, I'll usually grab the foot of the sail, and the tactician will help gather for the first bit, and then I'll jump down the hole and just take the spinnaker down with me.
And you can just grab whatever line isn't controlling the spinnaker, correct? Like in this case, you would just grab the lazy sheet and go down the hole.
Correct. Or like I said, usually the tactician will hand you whatever he's got as he's pulling it down, and then I just gather it all down below.
Yeah.
When they had 7, they had 2 guys on deck, and Victor actually ran forward and gathered down below.
Yeah. Okay. The bottom line is you just got to get the pole down first and put away before you can't even put the jib up. On these
Correct.
boats. Okay. Steve, anything you want to add to a starboard drop approach?
No, I think Doug covered it pretty well. Like I say, yeah, as a tactician, I go forward, and I've always sailed with 6 usually. I haven't really sailed with 7. Just like say the main trimmer, make sure you've got, I know with a gate it's a little tricky, but make sure you got your traveler and your main sheet all set up before you go forward to help. That's the tactician's, that's my job. If I leave a mess, the main trimmer gets pretty mad when they come back from the pit. So make sure that you've got your fine tuner eased, you've got your traveler set where you need to go. And one thing I do is I try, if it's light air, I try to set the traveler and cleat it on both sides so the traveler car isn't flying around, and that way you can pull in the main sheet a little easier than if the traveler car keeps going up and down as you're coming around the mark. In light air, I'm trying to pull it from the leeward side to keep my weight down, and when it's windy on the high side.
Nice little trick. Nice. That's a good little trick on cleating both traveler lines. It's an easy one to forget. One thing to remember, like in any sailboat in light air, you're going really slowly, but in a breeze, you get there in a hurry. So, you know, just like any boat, get it down early. So, all right. Okay, any questions on the drops from you all? All right, let's finish the boat handling with the dial-up. We'll watch Taylor's team come into the dial-up here.
We're now actually on board with Taylor here. They're just entering for their match as well. Taylor is yellow, obviously, and we can see Yanni's team in blue.
So there we go. We're going into a dial-up. Yanni to the left.
So Doug, talk to me. What are you doing with this jib up there? I noticed the bow person on Bertson's boat puts it up on his right shoulder to pull the clew forward. Is that what you do? Blah, blah.
Yeah, I usually spread my legs out apart so I can stand on either side, and I put the jib foot on my shoulder and constantly looking back at the driver or the tactician to see whatever side he's going to point to.
And
Carry on.
And that's what side I'll obviously try to push the jib out to. If he just calls, you know, hold it. So and basically I'm pulling it forward so it doesn't get stuck on the mast.
And obviously the jib trimmers have to be good doobies and not have any slack in this, you know, make sure there's plenty of slack in the jib sheet so you can do your job.
Correct.
But yeah, so I like the way the bow person's holding a jib up to get the clew off the mast. And then you're going to see a nice job of backing here. So obviously the boat on the left, Johnny wants to go up a little bit. So now his bow person, I saw him sort of take a step back. He's pulling back and down. He's holding about 3/4 of the way back from the front, but he went back and down. Really nice, I think. You know, he gets a little more jib in the air. Does a nice job there. And then he just knows when to release it. This is what you all need to practice this a lot. This is just the hardest part, is knowing how much to back. If you back it for too long, you end up going on the other tack, and that could be a problem. I like to take the slack out of the main sheet and cleat it, not so it's tight, but not so it's loose either. It helps the bow stay up. I like the way everybody's sitting down, low profile, so the driver and the bow person can see each other. Steve, anything else about boat handling here you want to mention?
Yeah, I think, like say, the jib is obviously incredibly important in this situation, and you get, the skipper. You can see Taylor pointing. The skipper will be pointing which direction they want the jib to go to, because you can't talk. There's a lot of flapping and a lot of noise, so you're always just looking at the visual. Bowman's always looking back at the skipper to see when to put it. See Taylor pointing and the jib going over there. So, like say, it's really a dance with the bowman and the skippers on that, essentially.
And then the final piece of it is, you'll notice both boats are losing their bow to the right. By pushing the boom out to the right, that will accelerate the turn from left to right. In other words, if the bow is not head to wind to the right, as both boats are, pushing the boom out to the right, the wind hits the leech and pushes the transom up, and it helps the boat turn. So it's a little different than if you're actually sailing backwards, in which case you might choose to back it on the other side to push yourself towards the other boat or away. So practice backing the main. It's a big deal in these boats. And you can see both boats are using pushing the boom to the right to turn the bow to the right in this situation. All right. All right, any questions from anyone on the call about the dial-up boat handling? Well, obviously, when you finish it, everybody knows that. Everyone goes to leeward, 2-1 press. It's a big, heavy keel boat, but if everybody moves, you can jiggle the boat a little bit. All right, so let's do boat speed. Steve, I kind of broke it down to upwind trim and downwind trim, but we're going to spend most time on upwind trim. Light air, medium air, heavy air. Light air is barely sailable. They're trying to get some races in. I know you had a few races like that in Ficker, maybe Con. Medium air is what you normally get out there, sort of 7 to 9. People get up on the high side, the boats are starting to go, and then heavy air would be everyone on the high side, about 10. So Steve, let's talk about any global thoughts on speed, and then we'll do jib trim, and then we'll do main trim. So go ahead, Steve, you got the floor.
Okay, well, Dave, obviously we talked about these are heavy, underpowered boats in light air. So once you lose your speed, it takes a while to get going again. So kind of like we talked about the tacks, kind of a typical tack, slow rotation, slow turn up to head to wind, and then speed it up, and make sure, as Dave talked about downwind, making sure you come out a little hot. Make sure you don't come out too thin on the tacks in light air. That is just the kiss of death. The jib comes in too much and the boat parks. So the boats do need to really come out and a good roll, obviously. And on the presses, we're kind of let the skipper call that sometimes. Sometimes in real light air, you don't want to press these things, just press the wind out of the sails. So we kind of make sure that that's, the default is with press, but we'll stop a press, if it's really soft, both on the tacks and the jibes, just if it doesn't feel right out of the tack.
I think one of the big keys to underscore is that the faster you go, the faster you go. And these are a bow down, keep them rumbling, keep them trucking kind of boat. There's a high mode can only come after you've got speed. And I think people who sail these boats for the first time, they get a little too thin on the jib, or they sail it. You just got to put the bow down, ease your sails, and get them rumbling. And then you can do all kinds of magic with a high mode. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Absolutely, 100%. And then these boats, one thing with these boats, they've got big rudders, big wheels. You can turn these things on a dime, but then you're not going anywhere for quite a long time. So it's really easy to oversteer these boats, and you got to just be really gentle on that wheel, especially in light air. When it's windy, it's fun. You can really throw these things around, but when it's light, boy, I've seen so many times especially in the pre-start, but even in maneuvering, where people they love to turn the boat. And boy, you put that big barn door out there, it really parks the boat up.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can see in the top of Taylor's wheel, there's a piece of tape here. And when I first started sailing the boats, Pedro put that tape there and he said, Dave, just, when you're sailing upwind, notice that tape. And it really shouldn't be moving very much at all. And it was a good sort of a training wheels for me. If you watch Taylor, we're going to watch the video in a sec. He's really still on the wheel. That's the sign of a good driver. So, Steve, real quick, jib trim, obviously little wrinkles coming out of the hanks when there's light air, take the wrinkles out and the breeze comes on. Not much you can do on the tack. Jib lead, is there a standard 2 holes back, or should they just look at where you put yours and copy?
Well, it depends on what set of sails they're using. So they vary between whichever set of sails they use. Basically, in these boats in light air, you err on the side of a little too far forward and powered up, because a lot of times you're coming out, let's say a lot of times you kind of have a tack and you're deep, and if you got the lead in the right spot or too far back, as soon as you let the sail out, you just lose the top of the sail. And since we do in match racing in light air, you do a lot of coming out on reaches out of tacks with just matching the other boat. We kind of prefer to have the leads air on the side of a little too far forward, especially coming down around the bottom mark. Sometimes we'll pop them forward on the run before we get to that leeward gate. So the first couple of tacks, down speed tacks, we're powered up.
Yeah, so that's a pretty nice look at Taylor's jib. And of course, the jib trimmer can always go back and look when you're going upwind, is between races. But the very round foot, which is unusual, and the leech has it parallels the main leech nicely there, and it looks good. Watch Taylor sail upwind here. You'll notice everyone's very still on the boat. His wheel hardly moves at all. Jib trimmer is making little adjustments, probably saying I'm 90%, coming into 95. Drivers I often sit to leeward in light air. As a keel boat, it's easier for me to get a feel for the angle of the water and the jib sitting to leeward, so don't be afraid to sit to leeward. No one deducts points from you if you're sitting to leeward in the light air. All right, and then main trim, Steve, probably same thing, the Cunningham, few wrinkles coming out of the mast, outhaul firm, because it's usually pretty flat water in there. Boom centered.
Right.
Pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah, one thing I would say too that's helpful for the main trimmers is there are some footrests on each side of the Traveler, and if you put your Traveler car right about even with those footrests, you're usually going to be really ballpark on having your main on center line. That's always a good starting point for your Traveler position. Nice.
This next picture is the best I could find of leeches. One thing I remember, Steve, and you taught me this, is that and now I'm hearing about different mainsails, so maybe it's not across the board, but these boats can handle a lot more leech tension than you would expect, is I guess my takeaway. You want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, you look at both these leeches here, they're pretty hard on the mains.
Yeah, or anytime there's any kind of breeze, we're going with more leech tension than you think. I'm usually going, unless it's really light, I've got 75% or more of the top telltale stalling, and basically the skipper hardly ever complains about the main sheet being too tight, but he always complains about it being too loose. He always you can really feel it on that rudder, and so definitely air. And if you feel like you're struggling at all and there's breeze, any kind of breeze, you put a little more main on, and a lot of times it just gives you a little more bite. That's why it's really important on the tacks to get that main across. And I'm letting out maybe 2 inches max on the fine tuner. I'm not letting out a lot, because you need a main to land on. You got to land on the main and the jib. And if you don't have the main going, it just accelerates your turn, and you really need to have the main. You really need to get that main across. One of the things, you've got that issue. The skipper wants you to stay to leeward as long as possible, but if you don't get the main across, I don't care how far to leeward you are, that's not going to help. So to me, especially as some of these teams are new to the boats, we're watching teams that have sailed many congressional cups, many match races as a unit. That's not, most of us out there. So I think personally, I would tell the main trimmer, most important thing is to get that main across in light medium air so that it really sets out of the other tack. Secondarily is get your weight. That's just my personal opinion, that I think sometimes we get so worried about being 2 feet farther out to roll a giant heavy boat and the main doesn't come across. I think the main is I think a main coming out of attack, and I'm sure Jeffrey, you can relate to this as just sailing the boat so much recently. there's nothing worse than coming out in a light medium air tack without the main on.
Good. Well done. Well said. All right. So one thing I preach, and I learned this from Terry Hutchinson, that the secret to success in any regatta is to have a training partner before racing begins. Find, two of you, just find somebody that'll hook up with you and go upwind together. Every time I go to the Congressional Cup, I often see people sail upwind by themselves, and you're really not learning anything. You really can't learn anything by, the boat feels good. That's not that's not the test. How are we doing? So line up with somebody else and then experiment with different little subtle sheet tensions, and experiment with getting the main a little tighter than visually you might want to, and see how it goes. So okay, any questions for Steve on the setup of the main, the jib? He's giving me speed. Luke, go ahead.
Yeah. What are you looking for? Sorry if this was already asked, but what are you looking for? What are you looking for on the jib halyard tension?
We're usually in light air. Anytime we don't have everybody on the rail fully hiked out. We're usually going with a little bit, just a little soft on the halyard, like just slightly eased from fully taut on the, on the left of the sail. And one thing that's really important on this particular race course, a lot of times it's lighter at the leeward mark than the top mark. And there is nothing worse than, you guys all know this, than coming around the bottom mark and having that jib halyard boned in really light air. So we actually usually tell the pit person in their excitement to get the jib up in light air, make sure you keep it just air a little bit on the slightly east side of your mark out of that leeward mark, and then you can wind it on as the boat kind of gets going. So, and then once the breeze is on, you're winding it on and keeping it taut.
Other questions for Steve on boat speed, upwind boat speed? Obviously, Steve, you try to keep the boat upright. Like any sailboat, upright is good. It's usually flat water where you guys are sailing, so you can get the boat a little more upright.
Yep, for sure. And very flat water in this venue. There's a big breakwater outside of us. So this will be, it's like sailing in a big bay essentially. So very flat water. Obviously the breezier it gets, the shorter the legs are really short on these. So, but yes, these boats will take the height in the flat water for sure. You don't want to be in the breeze as soon as everybody's hiking. Definitely, that's where it's important to be getting input on what the other boat's doing and combination of what's the best VMG and also tactically what you want at that point as well.
Steve, we're going to come back to that point. Luke, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah. One question was on when it's breezy, are you dropping the Traveler below center line, or are you?
Not usually below center line, unless it's really windy. And to be really honest, this time of year in Long Beach, it's usually pretty light in October. It's not. We actually got pretty lucky at Congressional Cup, got some nice days, but it's not. If we were doing the Congressional Cup in May, we'd be having 18 knots in the late afternoon. We'll probably be lucky if we get 12 to 13, but usually the boat, if it's blowing 18, yeah, you could be a little below center line, but usually once you get to about center line, the boat's on its feet pretty well in the big breeze.
When do you start pulling Vang on, Steve, when the breeze goes up?
Basically, as soon as you start dropping the Traveler. And if you're not dropping the Traveler, I like to leave a little in lighter air. I like to leave a little slack, because if you let the main sheet out and the Vang's on, it's not doing much. You're not opening up the leech. So,
yeah, I see 2 hands are up, but I don't see a name. So if your hand's up, just come off mute and ask your question, please.
Hey, Steve, this is Pearson Potts. I was just wondering, at what point are you sort of, pegging the Traveler? Or I guess sort of you guys move it from tack to tack, but at what point are you Vang sheeting?
Pearson, we can Vang sheet if it's puffy. If it's not usually really puffy on this course, but if it does get puffy, you can actually Vang sheet, and then you can also just use the fine tuner then. Especially if you've got a smaller person on the main sheet, maybe they're getting tired and they can't react quick enough. But most of the time, the breeze is steady enough that I think we are definitely putting Vang on. Like as soon as everybody's really fully hiked, we are putting Vang on. You're not allowed to put it on the winch. We used to do that. Dave and I used to do that many years ago, and then they got mad when we bent the boom. But yeah, we're definitely putting a lot of the windier it gets, the more Vang we're putting on for sure.
But at some point, are you just pegging your Traveler in the middle and not touching it?
Yeah, you're going to the fine tuner then. You know, to trim the main at that point. But I probably would prefer to have the traveler up a little bit because in the light spots, you know, you're gonna have to do something. So I honestly, the legs are so short. You know, it's not like you're on some big epic leg like we used to do way back in the day, Dave, and those 1.5 legs, you know, where you got tired. You're only on the, if it's windy, you're only on the tack for a few minutes. So I think usually you can just be on the traveler and just keep adding more bang as the breeze increases.
Good. There was a second hand up. Go ahead if there's still a question out there. All right. Steve, this is a good time to tell people what you taught me, and this is so powerful. It's this situation. It's very common in Long Beach. It seems like you get a lot of starts where the boats are on starboard and the windward boat is living. It just works out that way more than other places. So Steve, you're the leeward boat here. You're the tactician. You have a mode, a tactical mode here that you are powerful with, that you taught me, and I've used it to success. Tell the truth. If you're the leeward boat tactician now, what are you telling the helmsman? What are you trying to accomplish in this picture right here?
Okay, well, here's what I'm doing, and obviously they're just come off the leeward gate. I believe they're approaching there.
Right.
So basically, I am in full control of height and speed of the boat at that point, and the skipper is just doing what I tell him. He's steering, and the trimmers are trimming to what I need to do, and I'll be saying more height, up to more height. Okay, and I'm watching the bow of the other boat, and as soon as I feel like we need to get a little more speed, I'm like, okay, bow down. But I actually take over the lateral movement of the boat, to closing the gauge as much as possible. And obviously, you're trying to do this quickly, but you can get rolled in these boats if you get too greedy. So I actually, instead of having the skipper do it, the skipper can't be looking both ways, and so I literally just take over, and I'm working every single moment we're going same speed or faster. I'm working up to them and doing it as quickly as possible. But I feel like that's something I've worked on over many years on boat stuff that I'm pretty good at, that I know how to get to people and not get rolled. But I think it's really important for the tacticians to be giving that information, watching the bow of the other boat every second, and just like up a little, up to, and give them direct commands. Up 2 degrees, okay, hold, okay, down 2, okay, or down 1. You know, don't just say go down or go up 1, up 2, down 2, and as I tell the trimmers, we're matching. Like if we're pinching super hard, well, grind the sail in real hard. If we're reaching off, like just sail for our heading is what I say. Just sail for our heading. And
are you ever inside your jib sometimes in this mode?
Yes, absolutely,
Like
in the
couple
breeze.
Inches, 6 inches. I mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just basing it on the speed of these boats. These are big, heavy boats, and they kind of coast, and you can coast up to people, and so you can coast. Obviously, the same thing should be happening. The counter move is the guy in the weather boat should be doing the same thing. He should have his main trimmer watching the leeward boat at all times and giving that point. Or the skipper can watch the other boat, one or the other, because they have a visual. But somebody needs to be doing the exact same thing on the weather boat. I do the same thing as the weather boat. You know, I have someone, either the main trimmer or the skipper, usually tacticians up on the weather rail, and can't really see, giving that input. So you don't want to wait. You got to be getting that input right off the start line, and try to, and if you see him pinching and your same speed, you should be pinching too. And
well, I wanted to underscore this because Steve, you're so aggressive with this. And the thing on these Catalina 37s, they track pretty well. So if that leeward boat isn't aggressive about trying to get rid of the windward boat, they're going to get pinned all the way to the port ley line around behind.
That's right.
If you go to climb up to them, and eventually you're not going to succeed, now you have to put your bow down to match them. Well, at least you haven't lost anything for trying. You know, there's no harm in trying to get up to them, because you can always put your bow down and match them, and then you follow them behind them.
Well, and also, Dave, I can add, you want to be closing laterally all the time, because that's the amount of distance you'll be behind when you tack for the mark onto port. Right. So you want to be, so the mode is always going to be closing gauge as much as possible. And even at the end, even if they start to roll you as you get to the ley line, you know, as you get closer to your bow to bow, you're still going to simotack, or maybe you'll be, if you get too much gauge as the leeward boat, that's just the distance you're behind when you tack to the mark.
All right. And the final tactical bow on this question is, if you're the windward boat, the moment you're losing, tack.
Yep.
The biggest mistake people make is they start losing. So they go, oh, well, let's pinch a little bit, see if we can live, or let's tack. You only need to go a speed build. You only need to go 45 seconds a minute. You can always go back if you want. But if you lose, and then tack, then when they come back, they're going to be uber powerful on you. And I see this happen a lot in Long Beach. Hello, Peter. I'm so glad you're with us.
Mr. Perry, it's a pleasure as always, good sir.
As always.
Steve, Dave, one thing we got burned on a couple times. I feel like off the line in these boats, unless you're almost starting at opposite ends, it felt like it's really hard to live to windward if it's not really windy. Is that fair, or are we doing something stupid, which is also a very likely scenario?
No, Peter, not at all. You're and welcome to our meeting. No, absolutely not. It's really hard in light air for the weather boat to hold that lane. It's really tough. So wide right starts really only work if there's like say 10 to 12 knots and more. Kind of a combination of it's hard to stay up there and it's a longer leg time wise. It's a lot longer to stay on that leg in the light air than it is in the breeze.
I watched Taylor come off. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just gonna say, Dave, like I feel like take Oak Cliff, for example, in the 40s, if it's like above 8, that wide right start is super powerful.
Yeah.
Is it just boats or is it condition? Like what?
Yeah, I think
I just really struggled at Ficker with that.
Yeah, and I watched Taylor come off the line at Con Cup once, about maybe a ball length and a half to windward, about 7 knots. He started and he tacked, and then he went for a minute or so, and then he came back. Like it's not like he wanted to go right, but he just knew. I think it's because these boats are underpowered, whereas the Match 40s are overpowered. These boats are wider, so they don't necessarily, when you take a little bite, they don't. Match 40 you can glide more to windward and gain. These boats are fatter, so I think it's the nature of the boat, quite frankly. And also the mains are trimmed pretty hard, so there's probably more return on the leech. So for all those reasons, it's really hard to live to windward, and it's really important for the lure boat to take advantage of that and saw that windward boat off. Okay.
Helpful. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's shift gears here slightly. Downwind, we're not going to spend much time at all. I'm just going to make my annual plug for being perpendicular with your pole. When I look at this boat here with the pole jacked up like that, you're just losing exposed area. So I think your spinnaker pole should always be perpendicular. You can adjust the inboard and the outboard end, so however high you want to make it. But perpendicular is more exposure. I also think that even though the curl in the spinnaker is sort of in the middle, that's not bad, but it's high also. It's a high curl. So I think this outboard end is too high. These spinnakers are big, but you can make them smaller by letting your pole get too high. So my experience is a lower pole is a faster boat. And I think this pole is too high, quite frankly, and the spinnaker is too deep in here. And so that's my only feeling there. So. Well, Steve, let's shift gears and go strategy. There's two things. There's current and then there's wind. To kind of bring us into the Google Earth here. So let's start up on the moon. So there we are in Long Beach, the arrow. That's where you're headed if you haven't been to Long Beach. As we come a little closer, you can see how the coastline comes. The coastline actually in Long Beach, the coastline goes east and west. So it's a little unusual, but the coastline's east and west. Here's Catalina Island. You might hear Steve talk about Catalina. It's about 30 miles to the south, sort of southwest of Long Beach. That's the island there. So that's Catalina. Zooming in, this body of water is where you're going to be racing. Steve mentioned this breakwater. There's a huge breakwater out here, which cuts down the water. You're going to see a bunch of ships lined up to go into the port. This is the port over here on the left. It's a huge port, and the ships are lined up as far as you can see them. They won't affect your wind too much, but that's sort of the nature of the race course area. Over on the right here is Alamitas Bay, where Long Beach Yacht Club is. So you zoom in a little bit more. Here's the Long Beach Yacht Club in the circle over here on the upper right of about 2 o'clock on your screen. There's Long Beach Yacht Club. This is Alamitas Bay, this little bay in here. Some of you sailed there. The Alamitas Bay Yacht Club is right here where I'm circling. Then you go out, you'll drive out in your motorboat, you'll power out. The breakwater, you'll hang a right, and you'll sail past the first oil island down into the racecourse area. And this is your racecourse area. There's 2 oil islands, one on your right, one on your left, and there's one sort of up top here. So there's 3 oil islands. This little thing down here is the Belmont Pier. For Congressional Cup and Ficker Cup, they put you right along the pier. It becomes part of the starting. I was told by John Bush, who's going to be helping run the races, that they do not intend to put you near the pier, close enough to the pier where the pier is going to be a factor in your starting. You'll have to see when you get out there. But this is basically your racing area. Notice the orientation is due south. But you can see 180 is kind of directly across the racecourse area. 240, that's sort of the range of the wind. 180 to 240, and Steve is going to begin to, he'll talk about those wind directions. Those numbers are going to be very important. And then focusing a little bit more in here. Steve, do your 30 seconds on current.
Okay, well, my feeling on current is when there is current on that race course, if we've just had a big rain because the Los Angeles River comes out just up barely up the coast there where the Queen Mary is, and it can come ripping down and make a big difference. That's true with Congressional Cup used to be in March. That used to be a big influence, or April. As most of you know, we haven't had any rain for a whole long time here. So I don't feel, there's certainly never a tactical time where you would consider current. It's all pressure related. If you're in the best pressure, you're doing the best. And I haven't seen it really affect ley lines either. So I don't think for this regatta, I don't think current's an extremely minor issue here, or minor, just a minor consideration.
All right, well, Steve, there's your race course. There's some numbers, 180 to 240. Talk about what are you looking for in direction and which way do you go? When do you go left? When do you go right?
Okay, well,
and maybe think about October, as best you can.
Right. So let me shorten up the race course. The race course is very short. So what they're going to do is they're going to pull in Congressional Cup, the starting line is just very close to that pier sticking out. And we got a lot of excitement at the pier, but they've cleared it off, cleared the fishermen off and everything. For these races, they're going to pull the starting line a little farther away so that the pier, just a little bit. But the course is so short, Dave, that we're actually, it's even smaller than that circle. It's really short.
This is the area. I wasn't saying that's the race circle. That's
Right.
the area you're in.
Right, but they seem to be making the course shorter every year. I think it's really getting short. So basically, a traditional Southern California day starts with the wind. If it's sunny or overcast, starts with a light breeze out of the south or southeast, and eventually, hopefully, it clocks over to the southwest to that. 240 is pretty far right. That's about the most you're going to get here in Long Beach. Sometimes it'll kind of lock in at 225. If it stays at 180 or stays out of the southeast, it's going to be lighter usually. This time of year is lighter generally than it is in the spring and the summer. There is, if the wind's coming out of south, we have what we call a Catalina eddy, where the Catalina is a big island. It's 25 miles long and it's about 25 miles off the coast, and it does affect the breeze. So generally, if the wind's coming out of 180 or left of that, it's usually going to be lighter and it's not going to pick up. This track, generally when it's lighter, the left is favored, but the right shift can come in. So you get that fun conundrum of, okay, it isn't all gold. Early in the day, what I like to do in a pre-start is we talk about defaults, and the skipper and I talk about what's our default. And usually in the morning, if we're not sure, the default is go left. In the afternoon, the default is go right if the pressure is even across the course. In Long Beach, where we sail, we're very close to the beach. And many times if you start right on, if you do a split start going right, there's just a little bit of lighter air in that little band on the hard right corner. And there can be, in the morning and the middle day, there can definitely be shears on port tack. And the guy to weather on port can get the shears. You fall out of that shear, you're dead. I mean, because he won't get it. And if you tack back, he'll just bounce you back into it one more time. So if you have pressure, so I'm looking for pressure along the right side of the course every single race. And if I don't think there's as much pressure on the right side, I will favor the left side of the course initially. The wind does go. There are lefties at the top mark in the light air when the breeze is building. There are righty shifts as you get to the top of the course. That oil island, the upper left or upper middle oil island usually the cores are short enough, it doesn't have a lot of effect, but it can if they set the course a little longer. it can have a little bit of effect. But if it's breezy, that right side's pretty powerful in the breeze. Most of the time, you definitely want to err on that side, and light air, err on the left if you're not sure.
Steve, give me a number, 225. Give me a number where it's pretty filled in. It's at, give me the number, and now you're thinking right.
I think once you've got enough wind, once you've got to about, when you start, basically we're watching, basically once you get to past 180, 190, you start looking to the right. But again, I'm still looking at pressures. I'm not married to like, got to go right. If I see more pressure on the left, I'm happy to take that. I'm still, until it really fills in strong, I'm still leery of that light air in the right corner. So, you know, I'm happy to be middle right, but, or happy to, if you're leading right and the guy's on your hip and you have a chance to step up, I absolutely step up every single time just to protect myself from that hard right corner. If it's kind of sketchy breezy, if it's super breezy, you can just go right and you'll be fine as long as there's pressure. But I'd say, you know, I usually, and you'll see it also with like in most places we sail, if it's cloudy, it's probably not going right. If it starts clearing, look for the right, you know, which I've always kind of served me well over the years, wherever I sail. You know, so there's that as well, just looking at the clouds. If it's hazy, it's probably going to stay more southerly during the day. If it's really clears up, it'll be going right. Just as telltale signs.
Well, you know, certainly I watched a lot of the Con Cup races, and, you know, Jeffrey and some of the others were out there, and Ficker and Peter was out there. But when it's 180, 190, 200, and it's kind of light, I can't tell you how many times the boats that go out to the left, you know, they just are more pressure. I mean, how many times have you seen it where, you know, there's a boat down to leeward here, and you're just climbing off them. It just happens, seems so often that left is pretty powerful until you get to the point where it's going to start going right. And I remember 225 was kind of a number we used to use. That once it got there, it's pretty filled in. It probably is not going back to the left. It's probably on its way to the right. But.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying that once it gets past 180, we're starting to at least keep our eyes open for that right. We're not just ignoring it, but we're still, defaults are still go left. And sailing isn't much fun when you're on the wrong side of that sheer.
And the other thing I want to point out to those of you who haven't been there before, let's assume that the starting line is, let's say the starting line is here, let's just say, such that port tack would sort of take in this direction here, start like that. So Steve made the point that, remember you said, Steve, if you get below that ley line to that island down in here, it's really light down there. Like sometimes you can't go right off the line. You got to go left for a while, even if you want to go right. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, well, actually, I would prefer, unless I'm really convinced the right side is super favored and I had good breeze, I would absolutely prefer to be pushed out, push out the action out to the left, even if I got to lead back and keep the race close. I think there's just nothing worse than being in that right corner, right side, and the other guy goes bow up, and you lose that and you just got nothing. And then he bounces you twice into there and it's all over. So now the course, it seems to me that, and I watched some of the Congressional Cup this year, the courses were so short. I don't think that island really came into play as far as getting close enough. It seemed like the marks are just really short. The course legs are really short now, Dave. Like they're just shorter every year.
All right, so let's just breathe out here. So you just got a nice little tutorial on sailing in Long Beach. So questions for Steve, local knowledge about sailing in Long Beach.
I just have one comment. Just sailing the GC32s out there last weekend. We had like mid-afternoon on like Thursday, Friday. We had like two weird shifts probably coming out of like 300 to 320.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super funky. And we had the wind fully shut off, and then a build back, and then more of a shift back towards like a 250 kind of angle. But it's pretty blanketed by the port, and especially down here with the island. Yeah. So that's just something to look out for.
In my experience, if the breeze isn't between 180 and 240, in that venue is just jungle ball.
Yeah, and it was all over the place.
It's just jungle ball, and very often you don't race. I mean,
Right. Well, and so let me address. Good work, Peter, on bringing that up. Jeffrey and Pearson certainly know about this, from the Ficker Cup that we just had. Later in the day in September and October, you have to watch for a land breeze coming off the shore, which is going to be coming, which is going to bring the wind to where you're basically almost paralleling the shore on starboard and headed into the shore on port. And Dave and I have both been in races where there were two breezes, and you actually had to determine which breeze was winning at the top mark. And you're like, okay, which one's if we think the land breeze is going to win the top mark, we go right. If the sea breeze is going to win at the top mark, we go left. And it's brutal and jungle ball. And so that, yes, you don't need to worry about that early in the day. That does not happen in the first or second race, but once you get past 2 o'clock, especially if it's really hot, inland, you got to watch for that. It's a hot day, you got to keep an eye out. But I always keep an eye out, and you'll see it coming. It doesn't move very quickly. You'll see it coming on the beach, and you'll see, and it's a whole different breeze. And then there's a really fun transition zone between the two breezes, and it's really difficult. And hopefully the race committee can set it. I know at Ficker Cup they set a couple times where they were able to stay in the land breeze. They set the weather mark in the land breeze and stayed in the land breeze. And so it was, at least reasonable. But I've done races with you, Dave, in Congressional Cup, where we had that transition zone and we were trying to figure out which wind was going to win at the top mark. And it's tough. It's really difficult. So
Sam Bartel just said, then becomes like lake sailing. So, okay, well, listen, I want to spend a little time on some tactical stuff. One thing you realize about Steve Flam, he is the most generous with his knowledge, and this will not stop when you get out there. So, and Doug too. I don't know if Doug had to go, but I don't know if I think he's gonna be racing Etchells this weekend. But anyway, so keep asking him questions. The only thing I'll say downwind is keep your eyes open. You can see the pressure on the water, and sometimes boats split downwind, and if you get it right, you can pass downwind and better breeze. So it's like that. All right. Well, listen, I'm thinking of going to Big Hand on the 6th, headed for 10:30 on the East Coast. If you got to go, you got to go. It's all being recorded. If you can't take it anymore, you got to go. Go ahead, Steve. What do you got?
Steve Lowry here. Steve Flam, when you're talking about the land breeze, are you talking about Santa Ana winds?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very unusual. So, now, of course, you'll get it. So. All right, so I want to focus on a couple of I'll do a pre-start. I'm just gonna give you some thoughts on it. A little upwind, a little downwind. So we watched this one start with Taylor.
We're now actually on board with Taylor here. They're just
this was a start. It was a very standard dial-up. One thing to remember, in heavier boats in light air, the boat on the right, yellow, is uber strong. So don't miss them. If you're yellow, have a good entry. Don't overrun them and don't underrun them, and don't let them cross you. It's really hard to get a dial up in light air. So when you're yellow,
I'm gonna wait until this is over. I don't want like a.
Oh, somebody's not on mute. There's a wonderful female voice that's not on mute, so please mute yourself. So that's one thing I want to tell you is if you're yellow, plan on a good dial up, and if you're blue, plan on a really good entry in case yellow is late. I'm not a fan of setting the spinnaker on the entry. So I'm going to say as a coach, I would say, don't even think about it. You might get the downwind cross, woohoo. But if it goes wrong, you are in big trouble. But you will use your spinnaker in the pre-start. We're going to use that in a minute. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. If you're in the dial up, be patient. If you're the blue boat, get to close haul and do a better job holding your bow. And then eventually, usually the boats go away. And here you see, go off on port. It's going to happen somewhere around 2:30, maybe even 2 minutes. There's hardly any circling in these boats in light air, hardly any circling at all. In this case, Taylor is leading out on port. He'll decide when to turn back. Johnny will decide when to lead. In general, light air lead back, heavy boat lead back. Long Beach and light air, you want to go left quite a bit, or it's powerful to start to leeward, as Peter Holt said. So I would say you're going to lead back even more in the USMRC than you would in any other match racing. And I'd say the best match racers lead 80% of the time anyways. So here you're going to see Johnny Bernson take the lead. Leading is really powerful. And, more bad things happen for the pusher when you're late. So here we go. Of course, the bow person's got to be really good about time and distance and judging where the line is. Probably your main trimmer is helping with time and distance. Make sure you practice your time and distance. It's very important. And then this start's going to turn into a classic split start. It's very common. So the boat's just sit head to wind. Notice how Taylor's just waiting on port tack. He went past head to wind, but there's no, you don't want to go anywhere until about maybe 12 seconds, maybe 15 seconds at the most. Line 30 seconds. So you're going to go at about 15 probably, a little time to build speed, and you get a classic split start. Another quick point I want to make here is when you get a split start, it doesn't mean you have to split up the beat. And what I see a lot of people do is they get a split start and they don't want to tack, and you get this huge split, and suddenly one boat gets 4 lengths ahead and the race is over. So very often, if you get a split start, get up to speed and tack and keep the race close, because Long Beach is the venue, as Steve was saying. If there's a little pressure difference, one boat, it can just sail away from you. And within halfway up the beat, the race is over. So a split start does not mean you need to split.
To survive.
Yep, and
Oh,
now
here
we're
we go to the next
seeing,
one.
yeah, we're seeing on our screen that the next match is entered.
All right, so this is Eric Moner on the left, Taylor Canfield on the right. Classic dial-up. You can see those oil islands that Steve was talking about. You can see the breakwater in the distance. You can see the ships that are out there. Right now is a nice breeze, a nice 10 knots, 10 or 11. There's a beautiful breeze. I hope you get this breeze. But these dial-ups last forever, so practice your dial-up boat handling. I can't stress that enough. You're going to get blue. You're going to get stuck. A lot of you are going to get stuck in blue jail the entire pre-start. So you need to be able to get out. And what's going to happen here is now the boats are going to start going backwards. My feeling about going backwards, when I'm yellow, I never go backwards. So if I'm going, if we're starting to go backwards and I'm the boat on the right, I get out. It takes forever for a boat that's going, a Catalina that's going backwards to go forward. So I get out early and then try to come back. But here you're going to see both boats stay going head to wind and backwards. I think if you're the yellow boat, you're playing a very risky game. Your boat handling has to be superb. Of course, this is Taylor and Eric. Why Eric didn't trim his jib and go behind Taylor there, I'm not sure. Now Eric on the left has put himself in a really weak position. Taylor's the right-of-way boat. Both boats are tacking, or both boats are on port close haul. It doesn't matter. Taylor's the right-of-way boat. And I think he's avoiding here. I'm not sure why Eric doesn't get a penalty, but he doesn't. But you're going to see, now there's probably a minute and a half to go, and Eric's still trying to escape. So I'll make the point again. Blue is going to be stuck into the dial-ups a lot longer in these boats than you are in any other kind of boat. It's impossible to wiggle yourself out. You can't scull these boats. So be really good about using your boat speed and trying to get out, and boat handling, get it out. Now, this video is to show you the point where it's amazing how much time in match racing, one boat is totally crushing the other boat. It's like Anna Tunnicliffe used to say, it's like a dog with a rag doll in their mouth. They're having their way with the other boat. Watch what happens here. There's 45 seconds to go. Taylor's on the right. Eric's on the left. Eric's in huge trouble. He's too early to start on port. What's he going to do? But watch the mistake Taylor makes. It's one of the very few mistakes Taylor makes here. But there's no reason. There's 35 seconds to go right now. There's no reason for Taylor to have followed Eric over the top here. Because I think he was hoping he could keep him from jibing, but you just can't. The moment that boat bears off, and now maybe there's 30 seconds to go, and now Taylor's completely in trouble here. If he had gone to lure to the committee boat, then even if Eric could have jibed, Taylor could have jibed in front of him and let him back. So just be careful that you're really careful in the last 30 seconds that you get a good start. It's really easy in these Catalina 37s to make one more move and you just never get out of jail. This is how Taylor started that race, and he ended up losing this race. I want to make that point. Drivers, take off your match racing hat in the final minute and put on your just get a good start hat. Steve, hop in anytime if you have any points.
Well, I think one of the points you made just a minute ago that I totally agree with is, and I'm not naming any skippers I've sailed with, but I've had a few where I've had to tell them, for the love of God, you're in a good spot. Don't go back that last time and you end up going down the smokestack instead of just getting a good start. There's just nothing more frustrating than that. So sometimes you can definitely go for blood. And unless you're 100% sure, you've got the right side, you've owned that side, take that and go with that.
So here we're going to watch Johnny Bertson from Sweden. Johnny and Taylor were in the finals here. Both have won the Congressional Cup.
Let's jump into you for a second. We're entering right here. We're on Yanni's boat, going for the dial-up.
Remember, if you're yellow and you're going too fast, start luffing your jib now, or over trim your jib. In other words, you don't want to be faster than the other boat when you come into the dial-up. So really control your speed. Or yellow, you can go past head to wind onto port tack and then come back the way Johnny just did. So just don't overrun them. So here we go. It's gonna be a long dial-up. Now you see Taylor on the left. So the best in the world is blue, trying to hold his position. You start off head to wind. But what's going to happen here in these starts, especially if you start sailing on starboard, is you're going to need to put your spinnaker up in the pre-start. You can see the starting pin way down. Well, it's sort of you can see it off behind the boats and up the top of the screen. That little dot there is the pin. So they're way above the line. And both boats have to get ready to set their spinnaker. It's something which you want to practice. It's just a bear away set. You don't use the pole. You just set your spinnaker, drop your jib. You're going to see it here. So I anticipate you will be using your spinnakers in the pre-start, especially if you find yourself sailing upwind a little bit, trying to escape or pin the other boat, just not on the entry. So here goes Johnny. They're holding the dial up here. Now what's happening here is Taylor is starting to go backwards. And Johnny gets out. And that to me is the way to do it. If you hear that you're yellow and you're going backwards and the other boat's going backwards, get out. I think Johnny Bertson did it perfectly. Because what's going to happen, if you can get about 3 boat lengths of water between you and the trailer, you can go back. It's going to drive Steve Flam nuts because every driver wants to go back. And every tactician's like, ah. But here's the time. See, Taylor's still going backwards. So look at the difference of Johnny accelerating first. Terry Hutchins used to say, when you're down speed, get going first. The boat that starts going first will come out ahead. So you got to slow down to set the situation, but the boat that starts going first will always have control. So here's Johnny Bertson got going first. He's choosing to come back. There's about a minute and a half to go before the start. He's got a piece of Taylor. It's going to be a second dial up. This is going to happen a lot in your racing. You're going to get a lot of these spider situations and those second dial ups. And now there's about a minute and 15 to go in the start. And Johnny is really strong. But then he does something which I don't understand. So again, I'm not sure why, but you see now Taylor's starting to sail upwind. So Johnny matched him. So they're way above the line. And there's only about a minute to go before the start. So my attitude is, why would Johnny ever go back first? Of course, both boats are going to set their spinnaker here. So the whole crew's got to be on high alert. They're both going to set your spinnaker. But Johnny chooses to bear off and jibe, and Taylor tacks and they set. And I think bearing off and jibing was a really big mistake. First of all, anytime you bear off and jibe, your apparent wind has no idea where the boat went. You're sailing away from the wind. So there's no wind on Johnny's boat right now. Consequently, his spinnaker doesn't fill. It would help if his trimmer would trim the sheet. The spinnaker luffs for about 10 seconds here. That's inexcusable. But he doesn't have the same wind because he jibed and sailed away from the wind. Had he tacked and led it back, he would have been closer to the line than Taylor. And look at now, Taylor's got more speed. So now Johnny's in huge trouble. So now there's about 45 seconds to go. Taylor just jibes onto starboard. Well, let me give you a little audio. You can hear Taylor in action here.
What a close start.
That's the starting signal right there.
Yeah, Canfield has to give Yanni room to keep clear, so he has a limitation as to how quickly he can alter course.
He's telling Johnny to turn his boat, but Johnny's not turning his boat.
Hey, flag, 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 flag. Okay, staying right, had a little overlap, right? We're flying a flag, trying to make him tack.
Yanni didn't seem to be doing a lot there. It'll be interesting to see how the umpires on the water think of it. Yellow flag, yep. I think Johnny was not doing enough.
All right, so Bertson got a penalty there because when Taylor hooked him, Johnny needed just to basically tack away. Don't be cute and try to live there as a winner boat. The umpires are not going to be impressed. So Johnny went again from a position in complete control of the pre-start to starting with a penalty. So I just want to make that point that here at the very highest level that happens. So be aware of that. And drivers do not reach for that flag. It's usually behind you. Make sure the main trimmer takes it up forward and puts it up forward somewhere. All right, so now we have a great race upwind between two of the youth superstars, Jeffrey Peterson, who's on this call or was on the call and will be racing in the event. Jeffrey won the Rose Cup this year, the Youth National Championship, and won the Governor's Cup, the most prestigious youth match racing championship in the world. And he's racing against his buddy Dave Wood. They're both stable mates from the Balboa Yacht Club. Dave won the Youth Worlds this year, Youth Match Racing Worlds, also at Balboa. So two great sailors. And Dave Wood crushed Jeffrey off the start. So that's Dave on the left. But I want to make some points here. So here he goes. Dave on the left, Jeffrey on the right, and they just
but again, nothing's over till it's over.
So Jeffrey, come off mute and tell me if you're still on the call. Jeffrey, just say hi, Dave.
Dave's still here.
Okay. So Jeffrey's going to try a fake tack here. The only way a fake tack works is if you can make the other boat go past head to wind. So just put that in your thing. If you want to do a fake tack, you can't reverse yourself until the other boat passes head to wind. Then they have a tough call. Okay, so fair enough. So make sure you send them past head to wind. Generally, fake tacks do not work. The only reason people do them is every now and then they do work, and it feels so great. But I'd say maybe 1 in 20 works. Otherwise, you lose. And a big heavy boat like a Catalina, the best way to get out of phase, in my opinion, is to do two quick fat tacks. I call them fat tacks. So it's a planned move. You're going to tell your crew, we're going to tack and come out fat, sail for 15 seconds and tack and come out fat, assuming the other boat goes with you. That's how you get out of phase. But on the first beat, I never try that. In the first beat, I would never try to get out of phase. I would try to minimize loss and go to work on the run. On the second beat, I might try to do that because that's a little harder to pass the boat going to the finish. So those are my tactical thoughts on there. If somebody beats you off the line, minimize loss, just go fast, try to be as close as possible, pass them downwind. Spoiler alert, the way Jeffrey does in this race. But all these tacks are on the first beat, I think, are a net loss until right at the top of the beat. That's the first point I want to make, is avoid these tacking duels when you're behind. Usually you end up losing. The second point I want to make is in these heavy boats, you gain the most when you get the other boat to the ley line and then you tack on them. So your whole tactic upwind, your whole game plan is to get the other boat to a ley line and then you tack on them. So let me just show you right here. Dave Wood is on port tack and he's crossing Jeffrey. Jeffrey's not even in his line yet. You can see his wake. If Dave tacks there, it's the worst place you can tack, in my opinion. It's useless because first of all, you're probably not even on the other boat's wind when you tack, so you're not hurting them. Second of all, if they tack away, they're splitting. You haven't gained anything. The payoff comes when they get to the final ley line and then you crush their little hearts. So I think, Dave, what you should do in this situation, if you like the right, let your trailer go across your transom, let them go about 30 seconds, a speed build, and then you tack. Then when they tack back to port, you'll be up to speed when you get to their line, then you tack on them and you push them to the left. Or if you wanted to push them to the right, Dave would let Jeffrey go through them here, go about 30 seconds, then Dave would tack. A little riskier to let them get bow out to the right, a little riskier. So generally I prefer to extend to the right, let my opponent get out to the left of me, and then every time I come back, I hit them on port and push them out to the port ley line. So you can see here, Dave is doing a poor job of setting Jeffrey up, and Jeffrey's doing a good job of picking good places. Jeffrey just gained back another 2 lengths there. So good for that. Now David's extending, but I would wait 30 seconds. If I was Dave, I would wait 30 seconds before I tacked. So there's about 10, 12, 15, not bad. 20. And Jeffrey's got to be thinking, I want to get going back soon too, because I don't want to get myself stuck out in the left-hand corner. So let's see if Dave is up to speed. 5, 6, 8. Remember, Steve said about 30 seconds. So there's 15 seconds. So Dave is going to be in a pretty good position here to tack on Jeffrey's wind here. So here's where Dave wants to tack right on him. So I'm not sure why Dave goes across him here. He was perfectly set up to land on Jeffrey's wind, giving Jeffrey the only option of tacking away. And eventually Jeffrey's going to end at the port ley line. And then when you tack on him, in these boats, you can gain 2 lengths, 3 lengths if you can tack on somebody early enough on the ley line. So I wanted to make that point. All right.
Hey, Dave, while you've
Yeah.
got that there, right here, see the visual of where the weather marks are in relation to the oil island? They're so short that oil island's not in play anymore. It used to be in play when the legs were longer.
Nice.
Yellow mark would be the windward mark for him.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Now I want to show you a really good windward mark exit. It's so important when you're on port tack that you round the mark behind the boat in front of you. You never want to round overlap to windward. Jeffrey can remember a nightmare race where, unfortunately, he got himself hooked to windward of the boat when they tacked, and they ended off in la-la land and having to tack around and spinnaker issues and blah, blah, blah. So when you're coming in on port and the boat's going on starboard, you always want them to tack and get around the mark ahead of you. And you're going to round right behind them. You're going to have more speed. Your pole's going to be up. You're sneaking your chute. That boat just tacked. They're going more slowly. Their apparent wind's not sure where they went. You have a much better set, and you're in a really powerful position to pass them downwind. So that's what's happening right here. Sam Gilmore did a nice job staying behind. Both boats good sets. Now, of course, you want to soak if you're the trailing boat. There's no passing lane on the left on port tack. Okay, you want to soak. And my attitude is if you're within a length of them and they jibe before the first ley line to the gate or the finish, you cross over, go 2 or 3 lengths and jibe to their left. If there's 2 lengths of water between you, then you automatically simo jibe. So here goes Sam Gilmore simo jibing. I have no problem with that. But right here, if you're not well below the ley line and they're above the ley line to the next place they're going, you never try to pass on the right. And I saw it in the Congressional Cup so many times where boats try to pass on the right. You've just got to get that out of your system. And you're going to see a video of Jeffrey Peterson, textbook job of passing on the left. So right now, Sam Gilmore, the boat on the right, boat on the left of the screen should jibe out. He should jibe out. And you don't try to pass somebody on the right. Again, sometimes it happens. It's like a bad drug. Sometimes you get a good batch. But it's just like heroin. Pretty soon you're an addict, and then you're in the gutter, and then you're dead. So don't try to pass on the right. And this is what I call downwind jail. You're going to see what's going to happen to Sam Gilmore. He's a wonderful sailor, one of the best in the world, but he makes a huge mistake here. Emil Kjar, however you pronounce his name, starts to luff him. We all know the rules. And once the windward boat spinnaker collapses, the lure boat has to stop luffing and give the windward boat room and time to drop their spinnaker. But the umpire is looking for that spinnaker to come down right away, which it does, to the full credit of Sam. His spinnaker came down. I think Emil's playing a little close here. If I was the lure boat, I wouldn't be that close. But you can see Sam, he releases higher, but he's not taking his spinnaker down. So the umpires are like, no, you're not dropping your spinnaker. You're actually using it as a weapon here. And eventually the spinnaker of the windward boat hits the lure boat, and the lure boat gets a penalty. So Sam went from a position of pretty much power after the windward mark to losing the race. So I wanted to show you that because I can't tell you how many times in the Congressional Cup I saw that happen. And by the way, right here, the Dane should be jibing. Once you release from that situation, jibe and get to the left again to be safe. So full respect there. All right, so now let's go back to Jeffrey and Dave. Jeffrey did a great job of keeping it close at the top here.
For Peterson, but important.
So here they come into the windward mark. Jeffrey waited for Dave to tack, and now in they come. There's probably 2 boat lengths of water between the boats. That's certainly striking range with these big spinnakers. 2 to 3 boat lengths back, you can definitely reel that lead boat in. So now we need good spinnaker sets. I'm going to argue on Jeffrey's team, he hoisted a little soon. Remember how Doug said that sometimes an early hoist can be problematic. So make sure the boat's turning down. You can see how Jeffrey wasn't down to quite beam reach, and the spinnaker, it just sort of blows back. So don't be in a huge hurry to launch there. Wait till you're down to a beam reach. But both boats have a good set. Probably 2 boat lengths between the boats there. So Jeffrey's going to sail low. There's no passing lane high. The only time you'd go up is if for some unfortunate reason you're laying the next mark and you have to push the race to the left. Jeffrey's he's more than 1 length back. So in my book, it's an automatic simo-jibe. It's an automatic simo-jibe. And you're going to see right here, Dave Wood tries a fake jibe. You can see, watch the lead boat here. They're going to jibe. Jeffrey's going to jibe, going for the simo-jibe, and Dave goes right back. If you're going to do that move, try not to trip your pole. If you trip your pole, then it's going to be harder to get your boat going after you. Look at Dave's spinnakers all over the place, and Jeffrey's just trucking along. The other problem, the fake jibe there for Dave, is he did it on the ley line. So now he's way below the ley line. So I don't mind the fake jibe if the boats are within a length. I thought he was too far ahead to do the fake jibe in that time. Jeffrey's going to roll down. And perfect gate. This is why gates are important to use in match racing. Jeffrey's taking the right-hand gate, David the left-hand gate. Dave has the initial starboard card. These boats came together 2 or 3 times on the beat, and each time they each had a piece of each other, and David had the starboard card. So this is the final tack at the windward mark. This is a really close race. They kept it close to their credit, but look how Jeffrey overstood the windward mark in a close race. And you're on port, or you're on starboard, tacking the port ley line, go 1.5 to 2 lengths over. It's always better to overstand. A, you're going to be rumbling when you come in there. B, there's less likelihood of you getting locked to windward of the boat tacking in front of you. So here we go. David tacks in here. Jeffrey's controlling his bow. He has no interest in overlapping Dave to windward. He's going to wait for Dave to go past the mark. Dave spun the boat pretty hard there. Be careful, make sure you turn the boat smoothly. As Steve said, just because you have a wheel, it's easy to overturn it. Look at the crew work on both boats. Jeffrey's a boat length behind. And now Jeffrey's thinking, I want to soak, I want to stay low. I'm more than a boat length of water behind. I'm going to simo-jibe. You always simo-jibe when you're more than a length of water behind, because you still have room to get back out when you do that. If you're closer, you can't simo-jibe because just the nature of jibing, you're gonna end up locked in. If you're going jibe hot, bow people, you know how to do it. Just hold the sheet down, the lazy sheet, until you can, get your pole going. Or maybe with a dip pole jibe, it's a little easier. You can see Jeffrey's team struggling to get the pole out. But the point is, the simo-jibe is appropriate. But now all Jeffrey is thinking is, don't get locked into windward, because Dave's going to yell at me. Don't get locked into windward. So Jeffrey's waiting for the perfect time. He can make the nice VMG jibe. He doesn't mind pushing the game back to the middle. You can center the game up. That's perfect. So Jeffrey's patient, get the game upwind to the finishing line, and then you're going to do a perfect VMG jibe. And of course, Dave has to match this jibe. The lure boat has to eyes on the windward boat and turn like the Rockettes. The very moment that windward boat turns, you got to turn with them. It's so important to match this jibe. So here we go. So right now, I could argue that Dave is behind. He's behind already. If anything, that lure boat should be leading that jibe, because the worst case scenario is going to be what's going to happen is you're going to let the trailing boat get on your wind. So Dave is late on the jibe. You also see Jeffrey's team has a better jibe, and they come out a little hotter. Jeffrey has a great angle coming through. Dave's team comes out a little lower, and he's over-rotated the kite. I'm pointing these things out because it's a little thing, but it's everything. So Dave's team has let the leading clue of the spinnaker, the tack, if you will, go too far around the headstay. The spinnaker is not taking shape. Dave is sailing too low a course. He should be matching Jeffrey's angle, maybe even a higher angle. I mean, the only way you lose this is to let the boat behind you get up to your wind. So there it is. He was late on the match of the jibe. He came out, he turned too slowly. They over-rotated the kite, and he didn't come out a high enough angle. So now they're going to go barreling along on port here. You can look at the Windex of the other boat to see where their wind is. The boats are well set up. So Jeffrey's team, maybe the tactician, is trying to find Dave Wood's Windex. If the Windex is pointing in front of you, you got to head up a little bit to get to their wind. If the Windex is basically pointing at you, then you're on their wind. Same thing with the lure boat. You look at your Windex. If your Windex is pointing in front of them, you're great. But here, Jeffrey's powering along. And it's so important, the next thing I'm going to say here. The boat to leeward cannot afford to let their spinnaker collapse. If the lure boat spinnaker collapses, it's race over. So right here, David should be getting intel about where Jeffrey is relative to his wind. And just as Jeffrey touches his wind, Dave should jibe. Just as Jeffrey touches Dave's wind, he should jibe. Dave should jibe. And if Jeffrey tries to match it, he'll end up, maybe to windward and behind. It'll be a nice race. But you can't survive your spinnaker collapsing these boats. The delta and the speed gets to be too much. So Dave is trying to survive it. You can see they're way above the ley line to the finishing line. You can see the finishing line down there. There's Dave's spinnaker just collapsed. Look at the speed delta. All of a sudden, Jeffrey's going, a lot faster. Dave tries to luff here to try and keep from the inevitable happening, but it's just too late. And Jeffrey gets his jibe in. Make sure your main trimmer flicks the main so it fills, but I don't think the umpires would have any problem with that. I would say if I was Dave, I would have gone across behind Jeffrey and thrown the flag. And if Jeffrey gets a penalty, that's fine. If he doesn't, at least I can go a length and jibe underneath them and try and live to play again. By jibing to windward here, it's basically, you're hopping down into your own grave, which is what happens here. So now Dave is jibed to windward. It's going to be a problem. Make sure if you're the mast person, make sure you get your hand on the clutch of the spinnaker halyard. Make sure you get around the winch. So when you blow the halyard, it comes down about 10 feet. But the umpires want to see that spinnaker coming down right away. If it comes down right away and goes on the lure boat, you have a chance of getting a penalty on the lure boat. But right now, if you look at Dave Wood's spinnaker, it's still at the top of the mast. So the winter boat has lost all their grace with the umpires. They're not making any effort to drop it. Jeffrey is being very clever. He's giving plenty of space, not being crazy about it, but he's staying right there because he's uber strong. When you're strong, don't go away. Finally, Dave drops his spinnaker, but now it goes all over Jeffrey. Jeffrey Peterson loves to throw a protest flag. I've never seen him not like to throw a protest flag. I can't get him to stop, but anyways, knock yourself out. Jeffrey threw the flag right there. Dave got the penalty and race over. So I'm going to breed out. I know we're a little past the witching hour, but any questions about downwind tactics? I am a big believer that we here in the US are not strong enough yet on our downwind tactics. And there's a lot of passing lanes to be had if you play the game cleverly. I think Jeffrey Peterson just put on a master clinic on how to do that, including Macy's third floor going up in his interview, which put a smile on my face. But that's the way to do it. So any questions about what I just went through there? Yeah, Luke, go ahead.
Hey, Dave.
Meanwhile, let me invite everyone to turn your cameras on. Stay on mute, but turn your cameras on. Go back to gallery view as we wrap up here. Go ahead, Luke. What do you got?
What's up? What's your default plan if you're the boat in front there in that scenario?
My default plan is defend my left early on so you can't roll me on port. Get really good intel about the first ley line. If we're going to the gate, the first ley line is going to be to the right-hand gate mark, looking downwind. If we're going to the finishing line, the first ley line is going to be to the pin end of the finishing line. As I'm getting near that first ley line, I'm trying to soak. I'm going low and slow and trying to encourage the trailer to go above my line. I'd love the trailer to be to windward me on port. And then on that first ley line, I just jibe. And just try to jibe on that first ley line. That's why it's really important to practice your ley lines. When you're sailing before a race, every time you jibe, make sure your bow person, your main person, whoever's doing ley lines, tries to guess where you're going to be coming out. Jibe on the first ley line. If the other boat crosses over, Luke, you're on the first ley line. If they can't pass you, you just go into the mark. Maybe they get the left-hand gate mark, but if it's going to finish, you win the race. If they simo jibe with you, then you go hot. And even if they start to roll you on starboard, you're sailing hot. So if you jibed on the ley line, but now you're sailing hot for 30, 40 seconds, now you're way above the ley line. Then when they roll over you, their problem is, yay, they are ahead of you, but they can't jibe back onto port. They're in downwind jail. So that's the default for the lead boat. The mistake everyone makes is they jibe too soon in the lead boat. I love it when the lead boat jibes before the first ley line. Other questions about the downwind tactics before we call it a good night? And thank you for letting me.
Hey, Dave, can I ask a downwind boat handling question?
Yeah.
Steve, this might be one for you. Who trims your main in what I would call a shit fight?
Right. So ship fight would be where both boats are luffing and maybe even to the point where the spinnakers would collapse. So Steve, who's doing the main sheet in that situation?
Well, or a lot of times it's actually jibing and doing a wind check straight out of the jibe. So usually what we do in a 6-person boat is I'm on the main as the tactician going downwind. So I've got the main in my hand as we come around and I'm getting that in. And then I actually will slide down or do a double bump. Once I get the main in to get the sheet in, I'll double bump the sheet with the spinnaker trimmer to get that last bit in. And the person on the guy is just, if he's got to make that determination right away. Oh, the other thing is the spinnaker trimmer who's got the 2 sheets in his hand, if he knows we're going to a wind check, he just throws that sheet in the cleat. So when the clue's right at the headstay, throws it in the cleat. So he's not holding it. And he just puts both hands on that sheet and just winds that thing in as much as possible.
Let me add real quick there. There's somebody near the mast with 6 people. So if you're near the mast and you're doing a wind check, you should just dive to that lured spinnaker sheet winch with a handle and just start grinding. I remember Phil Robertson said the trick there is you just start turning the winch. If the trimmer doesn't want to trim, they just don't put pressure on it. But you just throw the handle of the lured winch and start turning, because there's nothing more exciting than when one boat spinnaker collapses and yours doesn't. I mean, every driver is yelling, "Don't let it collapse! Don't let it collapse!" as if they have anything to do about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dave, but we find that actually the double bump is faster than the winch handle.
Double bump faster than winch handle. Okay. There you go. 4 hands on the sheet.
You got a double bump on that sheet. You can get that thing in pretty
Which could be the mast person. The mast person could be the double bumper.
Yeah, it usually happens pretty quick. So there's the bow guy's up forward, and the pit guy could come back. The pit guy can come back.
Pit person's us. I mean,
yes, pit guy can. If the pit guy, because pit guy at that point, it's not doing anything. Either the pole's up or it's not up. It's not going to change. The one other thing is, as we're doing it, you can make a determination, and we've talked about it ahead of time. If you know you're not going to get a pull on the new jibe, usually on to starboard, then the person on the guy can pull in that guy, and that'll hold the tack down a lot better than just the sheet, on that side. And then when you go to square away, you just blow off that guy, rotate it back with the sheet, and human guy it.
I mean, it's a lot on here. Don't wait for the race to be practicing all this. So practice some, jibe hots, going hot, turning the boat, part of your practice maneuvers, because close match races are usually won and lost when the boats are rotating up and the spinnaker collapses. And so great questions, Peter and Luke. Okay, any other questions about the downwind game?
Hey, Dave, if people are shy, I've got another boat handling question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
What's your thoughts on these boats, on the effectiveness of a jib down? Probably not, actually, it's definitely effective downwind, but more in the pre-start and kind of, do you think the scramble is as effective in these boats as you see them in other bigger boats? Jeffrey, I see your opinion.
I mean, I would say these are big, heavy boats. They have a lot of weight on them, and the jibs are slowing you down when you want to carry to windward. So I can't remember if the Hanks, if the jib drops easily and goes up easily, but
yeah, they drop really easy.
Yeah. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I was shaking my head like that is the amount of times at Congressional Cup that Taylor or Yanni got like what we thought was below shutout ley line at the boat, and then they just spun the boat up, banged the jib clutch open, and shut us out. I mean, the amount of times we lost races to that was, I think we got jib down left in every single race against Taylor and Yanni. It's so powerful, especially in the start, because it comes down real clean. Like it'll go down more than halfway without anyone even pulling on it. So it's super, super critical. The only thing is like, you got to be careful when pulling it back up, because it takes a while to get back up and then get on tension and everything like that. So
that's the problem, Jeffrey. It's like the down's easy. It's getting it up on these boats feels like a behemoth.
And when we noticed it happen, the way they kind of prevented losing as much from that is they had jib down luff, and they'd keep luffing you, and they'd go back with the jib before like they even like got in anywhere close to detaching. Like they're still luffing you, like they'll jib down, use the speed to get into a advantage, and then go with the jib back up before they start moving again. And that was a way that they found, like, I guess, minimize the loss with having to put the jib back up.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Jeffrey. It's kind of like the spinnaker if you pull it up too early, right? If you put the bow down and then put the jib up, you're not going to get it all the way up. So if you can get it back up again just before you put the bow down, it's like coming out a little thin on a windy tack.
Great questions. We're here for you. If you got to go, just go. It's all being recorded. But what other questions about anything? We'll just open it up, pick our brains. I guess, Doug's still with us too. So yeah, pick our brains. But turn your cameras on. I know a lot of you here. It'd be fun to see the faces, and go to gallery view. It feels like we're in the same room together. So it's more fun to see people. So, all right. Any other questions for Steve, Doug, me, anyone?
Doug, are you sailing in the regatta? You're on mute.
Yeah, he's
not. Oh, there he is.
He's
You
sailing.
want to sail on the practice day? We could use it.
Etchell. I'm down in San Diego doing the Etchell North Americans.
No value there.
But I'm sure if you're looking for someone seriously, I'm sure if you go offline and talk to Steve or Doug, I'm sure they could find someone that could come play.
Yeah. Steve, I'm sure I could find somebody you need somebody for Thursday for the practice day?
Well, to tell us all this stuff because we've never sailed on the boats before.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
That might be a little harder.
Yeah.
but if you need a body, but you've got a full complement for Thursday for the practice of crew.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And we'll have tape.
All right. Any other questions? Listen,
Dave, I have a question. I don't know if these have been covered yet, but what are the thoughts on the jib leads for different wind conditions?
Well, so basically in light air, these boats are underpowered. So we're definitely going a little farther forward on the jib lead than you normally would, especially in mat tracing, because we're doing so many down speed tacks and coming out deep and trying to keep the top of the sail working. Once you get everybody on the rail, and then we're kind of putting it where it's a good even break, top telltales, bottom telltales. And then once it gets really breezy, as we said earlier, bring it back a little bit. These are pretty wide jibs compared to what people are used to using. When we're using those narrow jibs, you don't move the lead much. These things do get some effect. So I'd bring it back a little, especially if the main starts looking a little washed out, worried about your slot a little bit. And say once it's breezy, you're just grinding the hell out of that jib sheet. Like we're putting a jib on the jibs on these boats are not quite overlapping the top spreader, and they overlap the bottom spreader, and we're pulling it into where it's on the lower spreader in the breeze.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure.
The other thing that I learned from Chris Muessler, when you go into the dial-up, look at your counterpart. If you're the jib trimmer in the dial-up, see where they have their lead. I don't know anyone who moves their jib lead to a different place than they're going to have it during the race, so you can't see where it is. Main trimmers, if you're sailing a boat with a backstay, where's their backstay? But you can definitely look at the jib lead of the other boats in the dial-up. So, all right, Jeffrey, they're loving your lamp, man. Okay, any other questions, thoughts before you go into battle?
Are there any tips for pulling or pushing at the start, boat handling wise, and sail trim, steering, anything like that?
Do you want to take that, Dave, first? Or do you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Well, I would say these boats, as I said earlier, they turn quickly. So you can definitely, your bowman you can get a good swing pretty fast, if you need to clear a boat, and they don't carry that much. So you are able to get a quick swing, but you do park it up a little bit on that. The other boat will extend. I think, these boats, and the people who've sailed them know this, they do have a fair amount of momentum. When you go to turn up, they'll carry a while. And so you just have to be really careful in the pushing, that when you're pushing, you want to stay out of sync with the leader. If you get in sync with the leader, you're going to get hooked. If you stay out of sync, you're not going to get hooked. And that's true in every boat we sail.
Yeah, I would say if you're the trailing boat, don't chase the hook. You'll never get it. All the lead boat has to do is slowly start to head up a little bit, and you'll never get there. So if you're the trailing boat, put your bow up, and then when they go up, you put your bow down. So Steve is saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Make sure your bow person is really on it. If you're pushing, your bow person's got to be looking and yelling at you. 1 foot, 2 feet, you can't swing, you can swing. You know, you're a long way away from your bow. And the transoms do angle back a little bit. So you can actually put your bow over their transom. And if you're the lead boat, be smooth. You know, it's the sharp up by the lead boat that slows you down, that allows the trailer to come in and put the dagger in. So, you know, smooth ups. You can be quick on the downs, but really smooth ups. And you can just bait them in. And they get closer and you turn up a little bit. You get closer, you turn up a little bit, and suddenly they're right behind you and the race goes. And so like that.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave and Steve.
Yeah. Sure. All right. Anything else? I'm so pleased that you guys are this interested. I know it's such a great place to race, but it's very unique. For those of you who haven't been out there before, I hope you're feeling this is a really helpful session for you, and even those of you have. All right, well, I'm just itching to show you 2 quick things here. Take 2 seconds, but one of my favorite sayings at the Congressional Cup, when you have 5 matches, you guys are gonna have 5 matches, is on a short course, you're gonna get tangled up in the other ones. My favorite saying is, I went to a match race and a fleet race broke out. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say, hey, which boat are we racing? You know, and sometimes my crew is, I don't know, you know. So it happens a lot. So tacticians, be really clever when you're sailing around, looking for the other pairs, because a lot of times you can tack your opponent right into a bad situation, or you can tack and go right under 2 spinnakers, where if you'd waited 30 seconds, you would have been above them. So that's going to change your racing a lot. The other thing, I know your cameras are on now, so I don't know if the video is going to work, but as you know, in match racing, there's no rule 17 anymore, which is the rule that says if a boat comes in to leeward from clear astern, they can't go above their proper course. Well, match racing doesn't use rule 17. On these big heavy boats, if you're on starboard and you're going to tack on a port tacker, this can happen. This is Johnny Burnson and Chris Poole. Johnny Burnson is tacking on to port. What could go wrong? Well, what could go wrong is that boat behind has a lot of momentum, and he's catching up, and finally he gets the overlap. And this can happen, so be really careful. If you're on starboard and you're going to lee bow a port tacker, tack sooner than normal and keep your eyes on that boat behind, or have your main trimmer keep your eyes on them. And if that port tacker puts their bow down, you got to put your bow down too. It's going to happen to some of you. And so I just wanted to point that out to you. All right. Well, listen, thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, thanks for that. Appreciate that. All right, so now everyone turn your cameras on. Come off mute. It was just great. As I said, I will, cameras on, off mute. We're back in the room together. I will send the link to this out tomorrow, so all of you on the thread will get it. Do whatever you want with it. Let's not put it up on YouTube or Facebook. Let's keep it in the family, but send it out to your team. The Long Beach Yacht Club, if you want to put it on your site, if this would be helpful to other people in future events, there's a lot of great information here. Heck, to get Steve Flam, 35 years of Con Cup, and Doug McLean, 13 years, you know, is that 48 combined years, and I probably have 13 of them myself in there somewhere. So you got a lot of experience, a lot of old people talking here, but I want this to be archived so people can get a lot of it. And thanks again to Long Beach Yacht Club for hosting the USMRC. Thanks again to Bill Simon and the US Match Racing Championships Committee for doing a great job with the USMRC Qualifier Series. Most of you came through the qualifiers. It's a great series. A lot of people put a lot of work into it, and this is the birthday party. So this is when it all happens. So work together on Thursday to have a great beginning, and then go beat each other up all weekend long, and may the best team win. So thanks a lot. Again, Steve and Doug, thank you, and good luck to everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, thank you so much.
Guys.